Chapter 21. Poor. The herbal storage room was very big. It was also very neat inside. There were a lot of neatly arranged shelves with all sorts of herbs properly categorized. There was a smaller room located further into the building. The herbs in there were different from the ones in the outer room. They were specifically prepared for berserkers, and a normal member of the tribe was not allowed to go in there. Even a common healer would require permission from the tribe leader or the elder to go into this room. It was viewed as an extremely important room in the entire Dark Mountain tribe. However, all these rules did not apply to Su Ming. The elder gave Su Ming a special position in the tribe since a long time ago, and he could go into the room at will to learn how to identify all the herbs in there. When he stepped into the building, Su Ming saw Bei Ling holding Xianxia's hand. They walked towards the small room with all the precious herbs. There was an old man sitting cross-legged outside the door. The old man wore a robe made of beast skin. He was thin, his hair was white, and his face was covered in wrinkles. He originally had his eyes closed, but he opened them slightly to receive the introduction letter from Bei Ling and Xianxia. He cast a glance at it, then closed his eyes once more. Su Ming walked slowly. He knew that Bei Ling did not want to see him. So, he chose to remain silent and did not follow them into the small room. Instead, he chose to walk towards the shelves outside and look at the large amount of herbs on the shelves. He was familiar with all of them. He had practically collected all of the herbs there before. Bei Ling and Xianxia had not come out of the room even after Su Ming had finished looking at all the herbs outside. Su Ming hesitated for a while, then he began to pace outside the room slowly. "Young Lasu, what are you wondering about?" As Su Ming was deep in thought, an old and wizened voice traveled into his ears. He lifted his head and saw that the old man guarding the small room was speaking to him. "Grandpa Nan's song, I'm not Allah Su anymore." Su Ming scratched his head and smiled. "I remember now. The Lasus of your generation have completed the initiation a few months ago. Looks like I can't call you young Lasu anymore." The old man grinned as his eyes twinkled with kindness. "Since you're here, why don't you go in? Don't be scared, I have your back. I even dared to compete against the elder for a woman in the past. I'm not afraid of anything." The old man winked at him and joked. Su Ming widened his eyes. It was the first time he heard about this. After a moment of hesitation, he smiled bitterly and went into the small room. He was not hesitating because of Xianxia as the old man had suggested, rather, he was hesitating because of Bei Ling, whom he was indebted to. He did not know how to explain himself. Many years had passed since then, and the man was still cold towards him. "It's fine," Su Ming sighed. The moment he opened the door to the small room, he saw Bei Ling with his powerful presence. He was standing beside Xianxia, who was choosing herbs in the room. He turned around and glared at him. Su Ming met his gaze and went towards a shelf on the other side. He chose to ignore the two and started searching for the herbs required to create Mountain Spirit. When Xianxia saw Su Ming, she looked as if she wanted to say something. After hesitating for a while, she again chose not to speak. As she grew up, she began to understand a lot of things. She also understood her relationship with Bei Ling. The love she felt for Su Ming since she was young was dying away as time passed. Night marrow grass, thousand-leaf flower. Su Ming slowly walked around the room. He swept his gaze across the precious herbs and finally found the two herbs he needed to create Mountain Spirit. "It's a pity I don't have the last one." He had looked through all of the herbs in the room and was deep in thought. Xianxia and Bei Ling had also finished choosing the herbs they wanted. Once Xianxia bade farewell to Su Ming, she was dragged away by Bei Ling. Before he left, Bei Ling stopped. He did not turn back but spoke calmly. "These herbs are useless to you since you don't have a berserker body. Instead of wasting them, you should leave it for the other tribe members. Know your place." Once he finished speaking, Bei Ling took Xianxia away. Su Ming kept quiet. As he lifted his head to look at the two people leaving, he did not speak. Instead, he looked at all the herbs in the room once more. Then he took the two herbs he needed and left the room. The old man sitting outside the room did not mind Su Ming taking the herbs from the room. On the contrary, he looked at Su Ming in amusement. "Grandpa Nan's song, it's not what you think." Su Ming touched his nose. What would I be thinking about? I wasn't even talking about the complicated relationship between you and the two young Lassus. I absolutely wasn't. The old man laughed. Su Ming blushed lightly, feeling a little awkward. An idea suddenly crossed his mind and he squatted down to look at the old man. Grandpa Nan Song, did you happen to see this herb before? As Su Ming spoke, he drew the picture of an herb on the ground. The old man smiled and looked at the drawing. He sank into deep thought, then tapped his forehead lightly after a while. Isn't this the cloud gauze grass? We don't have this herb in Dark Mountain. It can only grow in a special environment. Only Wind Stream Tribe sells this herb around the area. Why do you need it? I read about it in one of the Elder's scrolls. I've tried looking for it in Dark Mountain but I couldn't find it. So that's how it is. Understanding dawned on Su Ming's face. Of course not. This is an herb suitable for lower-level berserkers in the blood solidification realm. It's just that they're sold at a high price in Wind Stream Tribe. If you want it, you can ask the Elder to bring you to the trading square located just outside Wind Stream Tribe. There are all sorts of herbs sold there. The old man shook his head and smiled. Su Ming's interest was piqued. He asked a few more questions, then rose up and left after bidding farewell to the old man. The old man looked at him with teasing eyes as he departed. When he left the herbal storage, Su Ming sank into his thoughts as he walked through the snow. Wind gauze grass. I can obtain the other herbs for mountain spirit myself, but as for wind gauze grass, Grandpa Nan Song said that it's really expensive, huh? Su Ming frowned. He searched through his pockets and found nothing besides a few stone coins he obtained from Black Mountain Tribe's yokai. They usually employed the barter system within the tribe and rarely used money. Once they left the tribe though, they would need to use stone coins to buy items. Stone coins were coins made from a special type of stone. There was an unspoken rule that they could only be created in big tribes. If any of them were created illegally, the person and his tribe would face destruction by the hands of the big tribes. After he searched through his entire body, Su Ming only managed to find 3 stone coins. All of them belonged to the dead yokai. As for Su Ming himself, he did not own a single coin. I don't have coins. How am I supposed to buy them? If only I had 100, no, 1,000 stone coins. As for the square, I know the approximate location since the Elder mentioned it before. Once any members of the tribe become berserkers, they can go there in pairs. The location of the square isn't far either. Su Ming laughed bitterly. He felt the beginnings of a headache forming in his head. Chapter 22. Are we going to change? Su Ming was immersed in his thoughts until noon. Then he gritted his teeth, slung a basket over his back and left the tribe. Lei Chen went with him. Lei Chen had gone to the square before. He went there just a few days ago, in fact. Once he heard that Su Ming wanted to borrow some stone coins, he immediately pestered him for the reason. Once he learned of the reason, he immediately perked up and offered to act as Su Ming's guide. Su Ming, those 2 were the only stone coins I had. I went through a lot of trouble to get them. When are you going to give them back to me? Lei Chen stared anxiously at Su Ming as they sped through the forest outside the tribe. You've been nagging me for the entire journey. It's just 2 stone coins. I've been giving you dark dragon saliva for so many years. How much do you think they're worth? Lei Chen, aren't we best friends? How could you be like this? Su Ming felt slightly guilty but he still glared at Lei Chen, causing Lei Chen to mumble under his breath. I really went through a lot of trouble to get them. Lei Chen scratched his head. As he mumbled, he seemed to remember something and looked at Su Ming oddly. Say, I just remembered. What are you going to buy at the square with the stone coins? I'm buying cloud gauze grass. Su Ming ran through the forest lithely, showing signs of overtaking Lei Chen with his speed. What is cloud gauze grass? Lei Chen asked honestly. However, when he found that Su Ming had already overtaken him, he immediately took a few wide leaps to catch up. Su Ming, you have to remember to return them to me. Su Ming, it took me a lot of years to save up those coins. Su Ming, not even my father knows about them. How did you know where I hid them the moment you came to my house? Su Ming, what is cloud gauze grass? Why won't you tell me? Su Ming, I've been asking you the entire day. Su Ming's ears rang with Lei Chen's voice throughout the entire journey. He knew for a long time that Lei Chen liked to talk. Once he started, there was no stopping him, but he did not expect him to keep talking for the entire journey. When dusk arrived, they had already traveled some distance away from the tribe's settlement. Within the unfamiliar forest, Su Ming's stamina finally ran dry and he began to slow down until he reached a huge tree. He leaned against it to catch his breath. Then he turned and looked at Lei Chen as if he wanted nothing to do with him. Lei Chen was also panting heavily while he sat down on the ground. Su Ming, you have to give it back to me. Lei Chen was panting heavily, but when he saw Su Ming looking back at him, he immediately straightened up and repeated himself. I'll return it, I'll definitely return it, but you have to promise me something. Su Ming laughed wryly. He already did not know what to say for Lei Chen to shut up. What is it? Lei Chen blinked his eyes. His expression was that of a simple-minded person. Don't look at me like that. Even Xiao Hong looks more convincing than you. Lei Chen, I know what you want to ask, but I can't tell you. You'll know later. Su Ming glared at him. He grew up with this person and it would not be an exaggeration to say that he understood Lei Chen more than his parents. Lei Chen appeared to be an honest and simple-minded person, but he was actually pretty sensitive. A lot of people were fooled by the honest look on his face and tended to ignore the slyness in his eyes. After he heard Su Ming, Lei Chen touched his nose and laughed boyishly. My request is simple. If you don't make a sound during the trip, once I finish my business and we come back, I'll tell you everything you want to know. Then Su Ming gave Lei Chen a long, hard look. Lei Chen froze as if his entire body was petrified. He did not move, but his eyes were wide open as he stared at Su Ming. Lei Chen, Su Ming laughed wryly. He played together with his friend growing up. He was not going to be fooled by his little trick. You were the one who told me to be quiet. I wanted to nod my head, but if I did then there'd be rustling sounds. I'm just fulfilling my end of the promise. I'm not even moving and I'm not making any sound. It completely suits your idea of silence. Aren't I being quiet enough? You're asking me to be quiet, right? Don't worry. I'll be like this during the entire journey. I won't make any sound. But if I make any sound when I run, you can't blame me. Stop. Enough. Just keep quiet. Su Ming pinched the bridge of his nose. He saw a hint of playfulness in Lei Chen's eyes and he knew his friend was doing it on purpose. Fine, I'll tell you. I have a berserker body, but it's hidden by the Elder's berserker art. Don't tell anyone about this. As he spoke, Su Ming's face became deadly grave. Lei Chen was stunned, but he soon nodded solemnly. If I knew, I wouldn't have asked. I just wanted to know whether you've become a berserker practitioner. Now, I'm no longer worried. Haha, from now on, we'll become the future guardians of Dark Mountain Tribe. Su Ming laughed as well. They took a moment to replenish their strength and continued on their way. The sky gradually darkened, the moon rose in the sky and the stars shone. The snow on the ground became thicker, too, and the winter wind blew against their faces. Still, they continued their journey without stopping. They even talked to each other on the way, creating an amiable atmosphere. I saw Bei Ling today. I feel so frustrated when I see him, especially when he has Chen Xin by his side. He knows that Chen Xin likes you. Lei Chen grumbled angrily. He's changed so much after just going to Windstream Tribe for a few years. Has he already forgotten that he's from of Dark Mountain Tribe? You didn't see his face that time. He even nagged me about all sorts of things. Su Ming was silent. Su Ming, I'll definitely surpass him. Lei Chen clenched his fists as he ran. He's Bei Ling, our older brother. He took care of us when we were younger. Don't you recall him teaching you all he knew about training in the ways of the berserkers last time? He was even punished by the elder for that. He even taught me how to use the bow. Su Ming spoke calmly. As for Chen Xin, I already told you ages ago. I only see her as a sister, nothing else. Why are you still thinking about all these weird things? Su Ming's voice was still calm. Lei Chen wanted to continue speaking, but he saw how calm Su Ming was, so he swallowed all his words back. He understood Su Ming just as much as Su Ming understood him. He knew that Su Ming was a grateful man. Su Ming, people change, Lei Chen spoke softly after a long while. As we grow up, as we experience more things, we will change. Perhaps one day, I will change, and I think, you will as well, Lei Chen muttered. Will I? As Su Ming ran, he fell silent. When the sky became dark completely, Su Ming and Lei Chen stopped. Traveling at night was exceptionally troublesome. Besides, there was still some distance left before they reached the square. As such, they set up camp under a big tree for the night. They took shifts so that one of them could sit down to train while the other kept watch. Su Ming leaned against the tree and his gaze fell upon Lei Chen, who sat down with his legs crossed. His body began glowing red and he could see a lot of red lines emerging from his body. After watching Lei Chen for some time, Su Ming looked at the dark sky. The moon shone brightly and it looked beautiful as it hung in the sky with a curtain of stars. Yet, it made people feel small and insignificant when they lifted their heads and looked up. People change, will I change too? Su Ming gazed quietly as he recalled all the times he spent together with Bei Ling when he was still a child. If I do change someday, how will I change? Uncertainty appeared in Su Ming's eyes. This was too complicated a question for a 16-year-old teenager. Perhaps I'll be like the elder and become a really strong berserk healer. I'll bring Xiao Hong on a journey around the world. We'll go to places we have never been to before. We'll go to all the tribes in the world and cure lots of the members of the berserker tribe. Perhaps, I'll even become an elder, then I'll find a girl I like and live with her. She'll go on a journey with me until we grow old together. Xiao Hong will become old Hong by then. I'll talk about all of my experiences with the Lesus in the tribe, just like how the elder spoke to us about his life. Su Ming smiled. It was a pure, honest and happy smile. Or perhaps, I'll get to know my parents. Su Ming sighed as he smiled. Lei Chen, I won't change. Su Ming took a deep breath and spoke firmly under the moonlight on the vast plains belonging to the berserker tribe. He did so even though he was the only one who could hear it. He was certain of his words just like any young man who still believed in a bright future. Night went by. When dawn arrived, Su Ming and Lei Chen woke up as light gradually lit up the sky. They washed their faces with the snow. The cold snow made them shiver and shocked them wide awake. If we travel according to our original route, we'll reach the square by noon. Lei Chen had already gone to the square a few times before. He rubbed away the snow on his face as he spoke to Su Ming. Su Ming nodded. After they washed up, they continued running in the forest as they welcomed the first rays of sunlight. Their journey went on without problems. When noon arrived, Su Ming saw a lot of houses made of grass and wood at the edge of the forest. There were also a lot of noises coming from the tribal settlement. Some berserkers from the tribe were also patrolling the vicinity. We're here. Lei Chen looked towards Su Ming, particularly at the woven basket on his back. However, the basket was covered firmly with hides. He could not tell what was in there. Su Ming looked at the tribe square before him. It was big. Its size was comparable to the size of a small tribe, but there were no fences around it. There were only several strong-looking men patrolling the area in full alertness. They maintained the peace in the area and prevented wild beasts from attacking. At the center of the square was a gigantic purple tent made of beast skins. The security was extremely tight and no one was allowed near it. That house belongs to the owner of the square. I heard that he's a really strong berserker. He will only appear to welcome tribe leaders from other tribes. Lei Chen spoke to Su Ming softly as they moved out of the forest towards the square. Su Ming only cast a glance at the purple tent before looking away. He stepped into the unfamiliar place under the guard's scrutinizing eyes. At that moment, a girl's voice called out to them coldly. Lei Chen. Su Ming paused in the middle of his footsteps and discovered that Lei Chen immediately shuddered when he heard the voice. Chapter 23. Like an initial meeting. Su Ming could clearly sense that Lei Chen was not acting normally right then. It was as if he was afraid and could do nothing about it. Su Ming looked towards the direction of the voice subtly. Su Ming was stunned. The person who spoke was a girl. She wore a small shirt made of mink fur, and she seemed to be slightly taller than the frail-looking Su Ming. Her tall stature and her shirt managed to show off the curves of her body. Her skin was not rough like her fellow members of the berserker tribe, but fair. She possessed a sort of beauty that would make others attracted to her. Her black hair was held together by a red string made of grass. There were 2 little braids by her ears and the rest of her hair was left flowing behind her head. It swayed along with the wind as it blew, adding to her beauty. Her eyes were like puddles of clear water and there was a cold fierceness within her eyes. There were beads of shiny droplets on her forehead, which became even more brilliant as they reflected the snow on the ground. Her 2 white canines could be vaguely seen as the girl exhaled and they added a sort of wildness to the girl. She was not a normal girl. She was just like Su Ming, a berserker. However, the strength of chi she released gave Su Ming the impression that she was only at the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. She was not alone. There were 3 other men from the berserker tribe behind her. They were built like little hills. Their gazes were cold as they stared at Su Ming and Lei Chen. The strength of their chi was only slightly weaker than Bei Ling's. There seemed to be markings painted on the 3 big men. As Su Ming looked at them subtly, he noticed that the markings looked like scorpions. Lei Chen, how dare you? The girl gritted her teeth as she glared at Lei Chen. Lei Chen touched his nose and the usual honest, simple-minded look settled once more on his face as he laughed in a silly manner. I was tricked by that dumb look of yours the last time and I got a stupid, dyed herb, which you sold to me for 3 stone coins. The girl marched towards Lei Chen, her face red with anger. You can't blame me for that. I didn't know what herb it was so, I just placed it at a random place. You were the one who wanted to buy it, Lei Chen mumbled as though he was wronged. HMPH, give me the stone coins. The girl glared at Lei Chen. Su Ming was also hated on because he was standing beside Lei Chen but he looked weak and fragile so, she ignored him once she took a glance at him. But Lei Chen smiled wryly. He was about to speak but the girl immediately glared at him coldly. The 3 men behind her also looked at him with a fierce glare. He swallowed his words and could only complain about the situation in his head. Lei Chen, is she the one from Dark Dragon tribe whom you and the elder spoke of? Su Ming spoke slowly, his face void of expression. The moment his words left his mouth, Lei Chen was stunned for a moment but quickly reacted. He knew that Su Ming had always been calm. If he said something, it meant that he would help. Besides, he knew Su Ming. The moment he heard Su Ming speaking so oddly, he immediately understood his intentions and stood behind Su Ming. He treated Su Ming as if he was his leader. Yes, young lord, that is the girl I spoke of. Lei Chen's gaze was respectful as he spoke with his head bowed. Lei Chen's actions and words immediately caused the girl to shift her gaze to Su Ming. She was surprised. The title of young lord was usually given to the future elders of the tribe. She looked at Su Ming closely but no matter what, he only gave off the feeling of a normal berserker tribe member. Hence, her countenance became fierce as she spoke in a coldly. I don't care whether you're the young lord. Return my stone coins. Fine, I'll give you the stone coins. But I came with Lei Chen here today to find you. Lei Chen was calm as he took out 3 stone coins from his bosom with his right hand. Give me the herb you bought from Lei Chen. Su Ming looked at the girl and spoke slowly. The girl was stunned. She did not expect to get her stone coins back so easily. She grew suspicious as her gaze fell upon Su Ming and Lei Chen. What herb is that? After a moment of hesitation, she did not reach out for the stone coins, instead she chose to question. That is, Lei Chen was about to speak when a stern voice cut him off. Quiet. Su Ming glared at Lei Chen. It made Lei Chen shudder and lower his head respectfully. When she saw his compliance, the girl blinked in confusion. She hesitated briefly and took out a purple herb. The herb looked normal. The only difference was that it was completely purple, which made it look terrifying. When she brought out the herb, she immediately handed it to Su Ming but she kept her eyes fixed on his face. When she saw Su Ming's eyes light up and how he lifted his hand as if he could not wait to grab onto the herb, the girl laughed and retracted her hand. What are you doing? This is my herb. I bought it. Are you trying to snatch my herb? The girl wrinkled her nose and clicked her tongue. Girl, do you still want the stone coins? Su Ming was surprised but he quickly frowned. Why wouldn't I want it? But I just thought about something. If you can show me proof that you are Dark Mountain Tribe's young lord, then I'll return the herb to you. The girl's eyes were cunning. Her slyness only made her wild presence stronger. Even Su Ming felt his heart race, but he kept his expressions as bland as possible. Su Ming was quiet. As he looked at the girl, he took a deep breath. He raised his left hand, and the sudden presence of chi belonging to a second-level berserker of the blood solidification realm spread from his right hand. Is this enough proof? The sudden change instantly made the girl narrow her eyes. Even the three men behind her became serious. It was not hard to understand why they were suddenly wary. Su Ming was until a moment ago just a normal person. There was not even a hint of chi from him. The sudden difference caught them all off guard. Young master, a strong berserker must have cast an art on him. That is why the presence of his chi is hidden. The berserker is also much more powerful than us, or else it would not have been impossible for us to detect it. That's right. I've been watching for a long time and I didn't detect anything. The only person who can do this is the elder of Dark Mountain Tribe. The three men standing behind the girl whispered softly into her ear. The girl lowered her head and looked at the purple herb in her hands. She hesitated. It had been some time since she bought the herb. She even spent a lot of time persuading Lei Chen to give her the herb. She had thought it was an unknown item and wanted to ask her elder about it. However, on the second day, she found that the purple tinge had spread to her hands. It was obvious that it was dyed. The discovery made her angry. Deeply offended, she brought the herb to the square to try and find Lei Chen again. Just as she hesitated, Su Ming spoke in a frustrated manner. I've already shown you proof. Are you breaking your promise? These are the 3 stone coins. Whatever, I'll give you 5 stone coins. Su Ming gritted his teeth and took out another 2 stone coins, passing all of them to the girl. 5 stone coins for the herb. The girl blinked. He managed to identify that she was from Dark Dragon Tribe immediately, so it was clear that Lei Chen told him about it. Besides, he also mentioned the elder of Dark Mountain Tribe. Then it's true. This is a rare item. The girl showed a pleased expression and shook her head. So what? So what if I break my promise? This is mine. If you want to get it back, give me 30 stone coins. When she saw the bitter look on Su Ming's face and the dismal look on Lei Chen's face, she became even more proud of herself. She turned around, snorted and quickly left the place. The 3 men quickly followed her and left the square. When the 4 of them went away, the dismal look on Lei Chen's face disappeared almost instantly. He smiled boyishly at Su Ming and touched his nose. Su Ming, how did you know she was from Dark Dragon Tribe? So you had 3 stone coins. There's still 1 more, right? Give it. Su Ming looked at Lei Chen and put away the stone coins as he spoke slowly. No way. I bought something with that stone coin last time. I still have something to do. Let's leave it for now. We'll split up for now. I'll wait for you here later at night. We'll go back to the tribe then. Lei Chen felt his eye twitch and immediately spoke up. He did not even wait for Su Ming to reply. He ran away quickly and disappeared into the bustling square. As he watched Lei Chen escape, Su Ming shook his head. If he was not too poor, he would not have revealed that he had chi. The elder's berserker art was extremely powerful. If Su Ming refused to reveal it, no one would have been able to see it. However, if he did not do it, not only did Lei Chen have to return the stone coins to the girl, Su Ming himself would have needed to give up his stone coins too. Looks like I'll really have to do this. Su Ming scratched his head and headed towards the square, troubled. The square bustled with activity. Within the tents were plenty of people trading with each other, and there were some who had spread hides on the snow. There, they placed various herbs as well as items for trade as they sat on the ground waiting for someone to buy their wares. It was Su Ming's first time there. Everything was new to him. As he walked through the square, he saw a lot of items he had never seen before. Among them were bones from beasts and all sorts of weird herbs. There were even a couple of refined medicinal potions being sold. They even sell dark dragon saliva here, and 1 bottle is worth 1 stone coin. Su Ming faltered in his footsteps when he saw that dark dragon saliva was sold as an item. It was on one of the hides on the ground beside him. He blinked in surprise. I've been drinking dark dragon saliva since I was young. Just how many stone coins was that worth? Xiao Hong also drank a lot of it. Su Ming was just about to leave, mumbling when he caught the glimpse of something on one of the hides not far away. That is, Su Ming took a deep breath and went towards it. He cast a glance at the owner of the stall. He was an old man in his 50s. He wore a loose hide shirt and sat still with his legs crossed atop the snow. Chapter 24. Now, it's dead. When he felt someone coming towards him, the old man opened his eyes and looked at Su Ming. There was a hint of shock in his eyes, but after he looked at him carefully, he closed his eyes again. Su Ming eyed a blue object placed on the hide. The object was shaped like a plate. The edges were sharp, but there were a few cracks on it. There was even a deep cut on it, making it look like the object had been pierced through. It laid quietly on the mat but would let out a faint glow occasionally. Anyone who saw it would have thought that it was alive. The cracks seemed to form a drawing. It was the drawing of a terrifying face, and it was frightening to look at. This is an incomplete berserker vessel. You won't be able to afford it. As Su Ming was looking at it, he heard an old and wizened voice. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the old man, who spoke. Berserker vessel. Su Ming sucked in a breath. He had suspected it. He had read about it before in the beast-skin scrolls. Berserker vessels were extremely rare items. Only the powerful berserkers in the awakening realm could obtain one or make one. As for the people in the blood solidification realm, it was difficult for them to obtain it. Even if they had one, it was usually an inheritance within the tribe. There also had to be people in the tribe who were capable of guarding the vessel from being taken away by berserkers in the awakening realm. This vessel is already broken. You can't use it, but since it was made by a berserker in the awakening realm, it's still worth 1,000 stone coins. The old man spoke slowly. As Su Ming stared at the blue plate, his gaze was filled with longing and envy. He only had 5 coins with him, so he could not afford it. He sighed. Su Ming looked at the blue plate again and left reluctantly. I wonder when I'll ever have my very own berserker vessel. Su Ming thought as he wandered through the square. There were a lot of people who opened up shop by selling items on hides. However, even after Su Ming went around the place, he did not see anyone else selling berserker vessels. He did, however, find some cloud gauze grass being sold. It was just that they were all sold by different people. The price for one was rather expensive. Just one alone was sold at the price of 1 stone coin, which was the same price as dark dragon saliva. It was beginning to grow dark. The sun was setting in the sky and the light cast a red glow on land. Yet, there were even more people gathered at the square and it continued to bustle with activity. As he looked at the sky, Su Ming decided to continue walking around. He even went into one of the tents. The tent was also a shop. The price for each item was expensive, but at least the quality of each could be guaranteed. There were quite a lot of people going in and out of the tents. As Su Ming watched, he saw some members of the berserker tribe who were the same as him. They were also carrying baskets on their backs as they went into the tents to sell the contents within to the tent owners. When Su Ming saw this, he smiled. He had been observing since noon and he saw a lot of things. After he pieced up all the details he obtained, he understood most of the rules there. As the sky darkened almost completely and torches were lit around the square, Su Ming went to a corner where the light did not shine. He looked at his surroundings carefully before quickly putting down his basket. He wrapped the hides on the basket around his body and put on all the other hides he had prepared in the basket. Finally, he brought out a black beast skin that looked like a robe and wore it, covering up his whole body. Su Ming's face could no longer be seen. From the size of his body, he looked swollen. He looked completely different from his frail self. He shook his limbs slightly, then he wrapped the beast skins even tighter around himself. Su Ming took a look at the basket. There was still one more thing in the basket. It was something he prepared specifically for this trip. It was heavy, but it had its uses. He swung the basket over his back and lowered his head. He stopped after taking a few steps forward. Then he hunched his back before quickly walking towards a tent he had chosen a while ago. The light in the tent was dark. Since noon, the people who went into this tent were mostly like Su Ming. They hid their faces so that no one could recognize them. It may have been Su Ming's first time at the square, but he had been observing the proceedings since noon. As such, he had already understood most of the rules of the square. He did not immediately enter the tent he chose. Instead, he paced about outside the tent for a while as he looked at the tent occasionally. Before long, a person dressed in a similar fashion as Su Ming came out from the tent and left the square in a hurry. Su Ming had seen a lot of people like this since noon. He was somewhat certain that once he left, no one would chase after him. He opened the flap and went into the then empty tent quickly without any hesitation. Once he entered the tent, he felt a gaze fall upon him. The person looking at him was a middle-aged man. He was half nude and sitting cross-legged. There was a bonfire before him. As it lit up the tent, it crackled as it burned. One of the man's eyes was empty but the other gave off a sharp glint. He was watching Su Ming closely without a word. The fire is quite dazzling. Since Su Ming was covered up by hides, he was not worried about the man seeing his face. He also spoke slowly with a hoarse voice and it was completely different compared to his normal one. The one-eyed man looked at Su Ming for a while before looking away. He felt no chi from Su Ming and he did not look any different from the rest who came. He may not have felt chi from Su Ming, but one who could enter the tent and seem so familiar with the rules could not have been just any normal person. He raised his right hand and pressed it on the bonfire. The bonfire immediately grew dimmer. The light from the bonfire became darker as well. "Take it out. If it's good stuff, I'll give you a fair price." The man put out his right hand and spoke slowly. Su Ming scrutinized the man behind the hides that hid his face. Then all of a sudden, he laughed. His laughter was also hoarse as it echoed in the tent. It made the man frown. Just as he frowned, Su Ming raised his right hand. Immediately, a round object was thrown at the man as a medicinal scent spread in the air. The man caught it in his hands. When he saw it, his right eye shone brilliantly as he took in a sharp breath. "How much does this thing cost?" Su Ming spoke hoarsely. "What is this? Where did you get it? What are the effects of this thing?" The man stared at the object in his hand for a while before looking at Su Ming seriously. A flash of curiosity appeared in his eyes. "When I was on the way to the square, I saw this beast." Su Ming did not answer his question but chose to talk about something else. As he spoke, he put down the basket and grabbed something inside with his right hand. Immediately, the basket shook and Su Ming took out a mink raccoon that was tied up before placing it on the floor. The mink raccoon looked listless but there was a fierce glare within its eyes. There were wounds on its body that had not healed. It also could not escape because it was tied up. The man was stunned. It was clear that he did not know what Su Ming meant. His gaze fell on the mink raccoon for a while but he quickly looked away. It was just a normal beast. There was nothing about it that required his attention. "I just caught it on a whim. Look, it's still alive." Su Ming's voice was slow and hoarse. Nonetheless, it sounded odd in the dim tent. "What are you saying?" The man frowned. "I'm saying that it's still alive. Do you know why I caught it? Because it was too curious. It had been following me for too long." Su Ming raised his left hand and caressed the beast's fur. However, just as his hand swept through the wounds on the mink raccoon's body, it shivered. There were no cries, no screams. There was only a brief shudder before the mink raccoon's body turned into red mist as if its blood was burned. As the man looked at the scene dumbfounded, the mink raccoon's entire body disappeared. Only a pile of red and black bones were left behind. "Now, it's dead." Su Ming touched the pile of bones with his left hand and the bones immediately turned into dust which scattered on the ground. The man took a sharp breath and retreated a few steps instinctively. There was shock and fear in his eye which could not be concealed. After a moment, he once again turned towards Su Ming with fear and respect. "Fallen berserker." Su Ming snorted. The man shivered and was about to explain himself when Su Ming waved his hand as though he was growing impatient. "Tell me how much that thing in your hands is worth." The effect of the item is simple. It will increase the effects of all the herbs you take while you train by 1-fold. As for the other question, you're too curious for your own good. Su Ming spoke slowly. The man's face grew pale. What he saw earlier shocked him. He did not even feel any chi circulating from the person's body. Nevertheless, the beast turned into red mist right before his eyes. This thing, the man took a moment to think as he looked at the round medicinal object in his hand. "Sir, I've never seen this thing before in my life." "This is," the man spoke hesitantly. He never spoke this way to his normal customers, but due to the shock of what he just saw, he did not dare offend the person before him. You can try it out right now. If there are no effects, I'll leave. But if you can feel the effects, we can negotiate the price. Su Ming spoke calmly and slowly as he sat down. The man breathed out a sigh of relief and agreed to Su Ming's terms respectfully. He took out a bell from his bosom and shook it lightly. Immediately, the ringing of the bell filled the tent. There was an indescribable look in Su Ming's eyes. He stole a glance at the bell and he tightened his left hand, which he kept hidden within the robe. There was still a bit of scattering blood powder left in his left hand. Chapter 25. Her name is Bai Ling. Su Ming was nervous. The qi within the man standing before him felt stronger than Lei Chen's. He was probably around the 5th or 6th level of the blood solidification realm. Su Ming could not hope to win against such a person. If the man decided to attack him, Su Ming would have had a hard time dodging it. However, he needed a large number cloud gauze grass, which would require a lot of stone coins. Due to this, he had to take a risk. Besides, after he killed Yu Kai in the forest, he felt that his mindset had changed somewhat. The knowledge he obtained by reading the beast skin scrolls he got from the elder were now deeply ingrained in his mind. Somewhere in his mind, he thought that if he could not overpower the other party with his qi, he could at least make his opponent hesitate. Then, his opponent would not act rashly. That was why he chose to disguise himself before going into the tent at first. Secondly, he brought the wild beast with him. All of it was to create shock at the right time. It seemed that his actions produced pretty good results, but Su Ming was still nervous. He did not dare let his guard down. In truth, Su Ming was not the only nervous one in the tent. The man was possibly even more nervous than Su Ming. He would occasionally glance at the spot where the creature died. When he saw the pile of dust, his heart would race, not out of excitement but out of fear. In the man's sight, the person before him, covered entirely in hides, gave off an enigmatic air. It put a lot of pressure on the man, especially with the shocking scene that happened just moments ago. The anxiety and nervousness he felt towards Su Ming was far stronger than what Su Ming felt towards him. This man is very experienced. He speaks calmly, but he is a ruthless man. He must be a fallen berserker who went into hiding in one of the mountains, but from his mannerisms, he seems to be someone reasonable, but I don't think this weird medicine will be very strong. As the man was drowning in his own fears, there were footsteps outside the tent. Then, the flaps of the tent were lifted and a man walked in. The man's face was blank. When he walked into the tent, he did not say a word. He stood by the side waiting for the one-eyed man's orders. When the other man came in, Su Ming only cast him a glance. The presence of his qi was not thick. He was the same as Su Ming. They were both practitioners at the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm. Eat this and this as well. The one-eyed man did not hesitate and handed the pill along with an herb to the other man who just came in. The other man took the pill and the herb, his face still blank, and swallowed it after a few bites. Then he sat down with his legs crossed, circulating the qi in his body. Very soon, his whole demeanor changed as if he was surprised. He opened his eyes before long and looked at the one-eyed man with uncertainty. There aren't really any major effects. I just felt the effects of the prime spirit grass increase, maybe about 1-fold. When the one-eyed man heard his words, he immediately narrowed his eyes as his heart hammered against his chest. He knew what the increase of effects for any herbal medicine by 1-fold would bring. If it was just a normal herb, the effects would not be obvious. However, if it was the sort of herb taken by berserkers above the 8th level of the blood solidification realm, the value of the pill would practically be immeasurable. For a normal herb worth 10 stone coins, this item would only be worth 1 stone coin. But if it were an herb that was worth 100 or 1,000 stone coins, the increased effect. The one-eyed man grew more excited as he thought of the possibilities, but he could not be sure that the item would have the same effect for higher-leveled herbs. It's a pity I don't have a lot of stone coins on my person. He quelled his excitement and sent the other man away. Then he stood respectfully before Su Ming and forced a smile. Sir, this medicine of yours is really mysterious. I'll give you 30 stone coins in exchange for one. How does that sound? The one-eyed man did not dare offend Su Ming. To him, Su Ming was a fallen berserker. If he could produce such a powerful medicine, he was definitely not a common berserker practitioner. 30 coins. The price offered made Su Ming's heart pound in excitement, but he spoke with a colder voice instead. This, sir, 30 coins is my final offer. I can't even be sure whether this medicine works the same for higher-leveled herbs. The one-eyed man immediately explained himself, but before he could finish, Su Ming cut him off. If you consume this medicine, no matter what herb you take, the effects will increase by 1-fold. If I didn't want to buy a berserker vessel, I wouldn't even sell this. The one-eyed man struggled internally for a while before he gritted his teeth and nodded at Su Ming. How many do you have? Besides the one you just ate, there's still one more. As Su Ming spoke, he produced a small bottle from his chest. There was only one scattering dust pill in the bottle. When the man heard this, he felt his heart twisting in pain at the loss of the first pill. As he hesitated, he saw Su Ming standing up and putting away the bottle. Then Su Ming lifted his hand, which turned the small creature into red mist earlier. He was also glaring at him from behind the layers of hides that covered his face. The man immediately remembered that he wasted a pill as an experiment and quickly spoke up. Sir, this, 50 coins. This is really all I can give you. Su Ming did not want to linger around for too long, so he spoke flatly, fine. Along with the pill you used just now, that'll be 100 stone coins. The one-eyed man only hesitated for a short while before producing a beast skin pouch from his chest. He handed it to Su Ming respectfully. There were 2 white stone coins inside. The value of the stone coins were decided by their color. The gray ones were worth 1 each, and 1 black coin was equivalent to 10 gray coins. As for the white coin, it was equivalent to 50 gray coins. If it was a purple coin, it was worth 100 gray coins. Give me black coins. Su Ming only glanced at the 2 coins before he spoke all of a sudden. The one-eyed man was taken aback, but only for a moment. He did not ask any questions. Instead, he produced 10 black stone coins and gave them to Su Ming. After placing the stone coins into his pouch, Su Ming threw the little bottle to the man. He picked up the basket on the ground and left the tent without another glance at the man. Once he left the tent, Su Ming did not act immediately. He chose to walk around the square. The moon and stars were shining brightly in the sky, and there were torches lit everywhere. Yet, there were still a lot of people at the square. However, most of the people who were shopping at that moment were all dressed up like Su Ming. He wandered around the square until he was sure no one was watching him. Then he went to the places selling cloud gauze grass that he singled out in the morning and bought more than 60 of them. After that, he went to a more secluded place to change his attire. He left quickly and went to the place he promised to meet up with Lei Chen. Lei Chen was already at their meeting place, yawning up at the sky. Su Ming did not speak but walked past Lei Chen. Lei Chen was surprised but followed suit. Both of them disappeared into the forest soon and ran once they were in there. Su Ming even changed his path multiple times. He did not stop to rest until the sky started to darken the next day. Even then, his face was pale due to fear. Lei Chen was panting hard. He did not understand it, but he chose not to ask. He especially decided to keep his silence when Su Ming threw 5 stone coins in his direction. Once he caught them, he laughed excitedly. They took a short break before Su Ming stood up once more. He ran with Lei Chen towards the direction of their tribe. He did not stop this time but ran at full speed. In fact, his speed seemed to increase with each step he took. His chi might not have been as powerful as Lei Chen's, but in terms of speed, even Lei Chen struggled to keep up. I had a pretty good haul this time. I originally thought that if I could not sell the pills, I would experiment with 5 pieces of cloud gauze grass first. I didn't expect things to go so smoothly. As Su Ming ran, he appeared to be deep in thought. The one-eyed man should be scared of me, but I still can't let my guard down. I have to return to the tribe as soon as possible. Su Ming was careful all the way back to the tribe. They were far away from the square by then, but they would still change their paths occasionally. Su Ming even used his experiences in the forest to erase their tracks. The sun lit up the sky, but there was still some time before noon. Su Ming and Lei Chen caught sight of their tribe some distance away. When he saw the tribe, Su Ming finally relaxed. There was even a smile on his face. We're finally back. Su Ming, you still haven't told me how you knew Bai Ling was a member of Dark Dragon tribe. Lei Chen was gasping as he tried to catch his breath. As Su Ming slowed down, he grabbed the chance to ask him the one question that had been on his mind. Bai Ling. The image of the tall and beautiful girl surfaced in Su Ming's head. He thought especially of the girl wrinkling her nose and looking at them with her bright eyes. She seemed feral, but it was a wild sort of beauty. I didn't know that she was from Dark Dragon tribe. Su Ming smiled. The girl named Bai Ling was the prettiest girl he had ever seen since he was young. No way. If you didn't know, how did you manage to get it right in one go? Lei Chen had been thinking about it for a long time, but he still could not get an answer. Now that Su Ming did not intend to tell him the answer, he became desperate. Su Ming took one look at Lei Chen and laughed out loud. Lei Chen, you like her? Nonsense. Lei Chen shook his head fervently, then began mumbling under his breath. She's too thin for my liking. I like those who are a bit on the plump side. Lei Chen scratched his head. He had always liked women who were a little more built since he was young. Even now, it was still the same. Su Ming continued laughing and joking with Lei Chen as he ran back towards the tribe. The sounds of carefree laughter and camaraderie resounded in the cold winter. The tattoos of the Dark Dragon were on the three men behind Bai Ling. The only ones who like painting dark dragons on their body around this area are the people from Dark Dragon tribe. As they were near their tribe, Su Ming told Lei Chen between laughs. When Lei Chen heard the answer, he immediately laughed wryly. He did not expect the answer to be so simple. Su Ming and Lei Chen returned to their houses safely. As Su Ming brought out the cloud gauze grass he bought, his eyes were bright with anticipation. Mountain spirit, I wonder what its effects are once I finish making it. The elder told me to not leave the tribe for the time being. I'll return as soon as possible. I don't think I'll be gone for long. Su Ming made his decision after he was deep in thought. At the same time Su Ming made his decision, something big happened at the square far away from Dark Mountain tribe. The cause of it all was the round pill Su Ming created. Once Su Ming left, the one-eyed man pondered for a long time in his tent and refused to accept any more clients who wanted to trade with him. As he was thinking, he gritted his teeth. He quickly took the bottle containing the pill to the owner of the square, who resided in the large purple tent. Chapter 26. The Night of the Blood-Red Moon. The Night of the Blood-Red Moon. The one-eyed man waited for a long time before he was summoned. When he was called, he entered the tent respectfully. After an hour, he exited the tent with an ecstatic expression, his mannerisms still respectful as he left. Within the purple tent were two elderly men with completely white hair, but their eyes still held a lot of life and vigor. Before them laid a very normal-looking, empty small bottle. One of the old men who wore a white robe held a pill between his fingers. He looked at it for a while. Then slowly, his gaze was filled with surprise and uncertainty. He sank into deep thought for a moment, after which he brought the pill to his nose and took a sniff. He closed his eyes in concentration. After a long moment, he opened his eyes abruptly. It's just like he said. This pill has unbelievable effects. I've been in Windstream tribe for many years, but I've never seen such a thing in my life. By the looks of it, it doesn't seem to be a medicine made from a long time ago either. There isn't any sign of age on it, so it's clear that it has just been made recently. Just what is this? It's a pity a long time has passed since the trade took place. The fallen berserker is not an easy person to deal with either, or else we might get to know how this pill was made. The other old man spoke slowly. Don't be reckless. A person who can produce such an item is either a very powerful berserker in the blood solidification realm, or a fallen berserker at the awakening realm who came from somewhere else. Brother Joe, let me take this thing back to the tribe. Perhaps the elder in Windstream tribe can identify it. As the old man in white spoke, he carefully placed the pill back into the small bottle. Then he waved his right hand and the small bottle disappeared. You do that. The old man sitting before him nodded his head. This item is too important. I'll be taking my leave first. If I get any information, I'll tell you. The old man in white stood up. He then held his fist and palm together as a salute towards the old man called Joe. He quickly left the purple tent. The moment he stepped out of the tent, the outline of his body became distorted. He turned into white mist and rose into the sky. Instantly, he disappeared. Daylight had almost arrived. On the vast plains some distance away from the square, was a big tribe. The size of the tribe was almost equivalent to the size of a city. It was surrounded by 6 other tribes the size of Dark Mountain tribe. In the very middle was a big city made of stone and dirt. The city looked magnificent, like a giant beast had arrived on the land. The citizens within the city alone numbered more than thousands. It was not something Dark Mountain tribe could ever hope to overcome. The 6 surrounding tribes were affiliated with the city. Some of them were conquered by Windstream tribe while some sought protection when some sort of disaster befell them and they became part of Windstream tribe. Windstream tribe was a medium-sized tribe, but it was still considered weak for a medium-sized tribe. After all, Dark Mountain was located at a rather rural area in the world. However, it was precisely because of that, Windstream tribe could rule over the entire area and accept tributes offered by numerous smaller tribes. It was also the only tribe in Dark Mountain that was qualified to contact members of the Berserker tribe belonging to the upper class. As the sun began to light up the sky, a white mist flew across the sky. It gathered outside the city and transformed into the old man in white. The old man looked solemn as he immediately walked into the city. On the way, he met other members of Windstream tribe. All of them would stop and bow towards him respectfully. At the center of the city was a completely dark altar. The altar was built in the shape of a pentagon and was 100 feet tall. There was a drawing of a bird on it. The altar looked as if it was left behind since ancient times. The old man in white stood underneath the altar respectfully. After a moment, a gentle voice traveled from the top of the altar. "Hi, what is it? Elder, I was at Joe Rand's square and saw a medication I've never seen before. The effects of this herb are incredible." The old man in white took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. "Oh, let me see it," the gentle voice spoke slowly from atop the altar. The old man in white lifted his right hand and bright light appeared from his palm. A small bottle materialized itself instantly. Then, as if there was some mysterious force attracting the small bottle, it floated upwards slowly towards the altar. It was quiet around the area. The only sounds were that of the wind passing by. The wind caused the old man's robes to flutter. He stood there, as still as a statue, and waited silently. After a moment, the gentle voice spoke once again, but this time, there was a tinge of surprise in it. "There's only one," the old man in white replied immediately. "I've never seen a medication like this before. The makeup of this medication is something I don't understand, and it's clear this was made not too long ago. Who brought this to the square?" The gentle voice spoke solemnly. "A fallen berserker," the old man in white spoke in a low tone. "Find him. Use all the resources we have and find him. Tell him to join Windstream tribe and I will treat him as a permanent guest here." The gentle voice exclaimed almost immediately after the old man spoke the last syllable. The old man in white took a deep breath and complied to the order respectfully. He could identify that the medicine was out of ordinary, but he did not expect the elder to invite the person to Windstream tribe as a permanent guest. The status of a permanent guest was treated with extreme respect. Besides the tribe leader, the elder and few other people, they were treated almost with the same importance as the other leaders of the tribe. As the old man in white went away, he immediately had the entire Windstream tribe carry out the elder's orders. He had cast a huge net to search for the fallen berserker. As for Su Ming, he had just made a decision at home in Dark Mountain tribe. Hence in the morning of the second day, he left the tribe alone and went into the forest. Then, he ran towards Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming traversed through the forest without any hesitation. After reaching the second level of the blood solidification realm, his speed and agility had increased so much even Lei Chen had a hard time keeping up with him at full speed. As he ran through the forest, his speed increased even further due to his familiarity with the place. By noon, he had arrived at the foot of Black Flame Mountain. He climbed up Black Flame Mountain and went to the cave which he used for the quenching of herbs. Su Ming placed the basket down on ground. There were a lot of herbs in there, all of which he prepared for the purpose of quenching. Xiao Hong was not in the cave. It was most probably out playing. Su Ming cast a glance around the cave. Once he was certain there were no signs of abnormality around, he sat down cross-legged on the ground. He concentrated on circulating the blood in his body until the 10 blood veins shone brightly on his body and his body reached the best condition possible. There were even vague signs of the 11th blood vein manifesting itself, which could allow Su Ming to reach the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. The elder helped me to truly awaken, and he did say I was about to reach the 3rd level. Not a lot of time passed since then, but I feel that there's enough blood within me now. The ancient berserker art is truly amazing. Su Ming opened his eyes and the scene of the black substance oozing out of his body surfaced in his mind. I might as well put aside creating more pills for now and break through the 2nd level. Su Ming only took a moment to make his decision and brought out the sky stone he pillaged the other day from his bosom. He took a look at the herb and swallowed a scattering dust before plucking a leaf from the herb and swallowing it as well. He closed his eyes and meditated once again. After a moment, Su Ming's body was covered in sweat and surrounded by blood-red light. The 11th blood vein showed signs of manifesting completely. After a few hours, a muffled sound resounded throughout Su Ming's body and the 11th blood vein manifested itself completely. A much stronger presence of qi immediately erupted from Su Ming's body. Su Ming opened his eyes, which shone brilliantly. The 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. He stood up, his face bright with excitement. After he moved his body to remove the numbness in his limbs, he brought out the herbs. He began the process of creating mountain spirit according to the methods in his memory. Su Ming was no longer as clueless as he was a few months ago. He was already familiar with the process of quenching herbs and even more so at controlling the fire in the cave. As the temperature within the cave increased, Su Ming took off his clothes and stood beside the stone cauldron half naked. At times he would bring one of the herbs to his nose, whereas other times, he would crush the herbs and throw them into the cauldron. Time passed by. The sky gradually began to darken. Silence also fell upon the forest and mountains. Even the sounds of the birds and beasts became a muffled whisper. As the sky darkened, the moon rose into the sky, but the moon that night was different from the other nights. It was in a shade so red like there was a blood-red moon in the sky. The strange sight immediately covered the land with a strange atmosphere. It was especially so for the area around Dark Mountain. The sounds from the birds and the beasts completely disappeared. There was not even the slightest whisper from them. It was as if they did not dare to make a sound. A red shadow sped through the forest at the foot of Black Flame Mountain. It was the little monkey. At that moment, its gaze was solemn and alert. It would lift its gaze towards the red moon occasionally and distress would flicker across its features. As it ran forward, it hesitated. It still did not know that Su Ming had returned. It changed its direction and no longer ran towards Black Flame Mountain. Instead, it hid itself somewhere in the forest. As the sky grew darker, the moon shone a brighter shade of red. By the time midnight arrived, the entire Dark Mountain seemed to have been dyed in blood. At that moment, a weak cry came from within Dark Mountain. The cry grew louder as time passed and eventually grew so loud it traveled past Dark Mountain. The cry seemed to be filled with endless resentment. Those who heard it were filled with fear. It was a cry that seemed to shake the soul. If anyone listened to it for a prolonged amount of time, they would feel like their blood was boiling. It terrified them. The cry echoed through the skies as if it reflected the blood-red moon. It made Dark Mountain appear to be shrouded in mystery. That night, the 3 tribes around Dark Mountain were filled with wariness. The normal members of the tribe in Dark Mountain tribe all returned to their houses under the protection of the berserkers within the tribe. They were told not to leave unless it was absolutely necessary. The tribe leader also personally took command of the berserkers to protect the tribe. The elder stood at the highest place in the tribe. It was a stage made of giant wood. In his hands was the black bone cane. As he looked afar, his eyes were tainted with a hint of worry. He felt Su Ming leave the tribe earlier, but he did not expect the blood moon, which only occurred once every 3 years, to happen that night. It was months earlier than the previous appearances of the blood-red moon. The strange phenomenon made him surprised and fearful. Fire. After a long while, the elder spoke. Immediately, the tribe members surrounding the giant wooden stage brought out torches and placed them underneath the stage. The torches caused the stage to burn. The elder on the stage looked as if he was caught in a sea of fire, but he was calm as he chanted in a strange language. Dark Mountain Tribe was not the only one who did this. At the same time, in another direction from Dark Mountain Tribe, the same thing also happened in Dark Dragon Tribe. The elder of Dark Dragon Tribe wore a loose robe, hair untied. There was no telling whether the elder was a man or a woman. In the person's hand was the skull of a strange, one-horned beast. The elder lifted it up high and a piercing cry escaped the person's lips. Among the tribe members of Dark Dragon Tribe stood a girl of extreme beauty. Her face was pale as she looked at the blood-red moon in the sky. Chapter 27. The Legend of the Fire Berserker. The girl was Bai Ling. She was scared as she looked at the elder of the tribe on the altar and the other tribe members whose faces were also similarly pale with terror. The blood moon only appears once every 3 years, and it appears only after all the snow has melted on Dark Mountain. There would then be enough wild beasts to be sacrificed so that we can prevent disasters, but now, it has appeared far too early. Bai Ling bit her lip and looked around her, seemingly even more afraid. As for Su Ming, he was in the fire cave concentrating on creating and refining medication. He was covered in sweat as he watched the stone cauldron carefully, and he adjusted the temperature of the fire as he saw fit. Very soon, there was a muffled blast within the cauldron. Su Ming laughed bitterly and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He knew that he had failed once again. Mountain spirit is much harder to make compared to scattering dust. Su Ming shook his head and opened the cauldron. A puff of green smoke with a spicy scent emerged from within. He sighed. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly felt his chi boiling in his body as though he had lost control of it. He frowned, surprised. He looked around him to see what could have possibly caused such a change, but he found nothing. That's odd. Su Ming scratched his head. He only stopped for a while before he resumed his attempts to create mountain spirit. At that moment, on the other side of Dark Mountain, where Black Mountain Tribe was located, the tribe members were also looking at the moon. However, their expressions were different from that of Dark Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe. Unlike the other two tribes, their eyes were filled with fear and bloodlust. Roars escaped their lips. It was not just the berserkers who roared. Even the normal members of the tribe did so. Their cries gradually became one and turned into a giant, roaring wave. Within the center of the crowd was a small hill made up of numerous red stones. Sitting on the small hill was a willowy old man wearing a black robe. The old man's eyes were cold as he stared at the blood-red moon. There was a cruel smile on his lips. Since ancient times, the Fire Berserker tribe roamed the earth. The tribe had powers that shook the earth. They controlled all the fire on heaven and earth. If they were angered, they could even burn the heavens to ashes and become gods themselves. Their names spread through the land so widely that even those who did not belong to the Berserker tribe feared them. They were known as one of the 8 great Berserker tribes. The willowy old man spoke with a hoarse voice. It was as if he was talking to all the people in the world. But because the tribe wanted to steal an artifact from heaven, they were punished by the god of Berserkers. After 9 days and 9 nights, the entire Fire Berserker tribe was destroyed except for the Berserkers. Those who did not have the Berserker body were all burned alive and their souls shattered. Even when such a disaster befell the Fire Berserker tribe, the Berserkers within the tribe did not die. They wanted to rebel against the god of Berserkers and become gods themselves. The god of Berserkers laid down his punishment. Just as he was about to use his powers and bring annihilation to the entire tribe, the elder of the Fire Berserker tribe fought against the god of Berserkers. The battle shook the heavens. The elder of the Fire Berserker tribe died in battle, but before his death, he cast a forbidden spell that made the god of Berserkers afraid. It allowed him to grant immortality to all the Fire Berserker tribe members who had not died. Awe appeared in the willowy old man's eyes. He raised his right hand and immediately, black mist surrounded his wrinkled hand and transformed into a terrifying shape of a spirit. But he made a mistake. He may have allowed all the Berserkers in the Fire Berserker tribe to obtain immortality, but the god of Berserkers used the powers of creation and made them all lose their physical bodies. They became the wings of the blood moon. From then on, they became beings that could no longer see light. They lost their conscience and became the wings of the moon which lusted after blood. Their resentment, hate, anger and sadness have turned into a monstrous grudge that turns the moon red once every 3 years. When the moon is dyed in blood, they will return once more. Tonight, I, Bai-Tu, elder of Black Mountain tribe, will help you." The willowy old man laughed darkly and bit his tongue. As he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, the blood-red stones underneath his feet exploded and floated in midair. The elder of Dark Mountain tribe, Bai-Tu, also levitated in the air. He spread his arms out. His eyes were filled with madness and excitement. The red stones began rotating quickly in midair and formed a gigantic picture. The picture was spherical in shape and there was a crescent moon within it. The entire thing was colored a bloody red. "Wings of the moon, wake up. Awaken from your long slumber and come forth." Bai-Tu spat out another mouthful of fresh blood which instantly turned into bloody mist and fused into the giant picture in the sky. A roaring sound came from the picture and it exploded suddenly. It turned into a big patch of red mist which spread across its surroundings like rolling waves. At that moment, the entirety of Dark Mountain shook. The trembling could be clearly felt as if the land was moving and the mountains were shaking. The tremors caused an uproar within Dark Mountain tribe and Dark Dragon tribe. Su Ming, who was in the cave within Black Flame Mountain, also felt the tremors. His expression changed. He even heard a faint roar from within the deeper parts of the cave as the mountain shook. He froze and immediately stopped all activity. He retreated a few steps and climbed through the exit. When he climbed out of the cave, he almost gasped in surprise. Right before his eyes was the blood moon hanging in the sky. The blood moon. Su Ming's face immediately turned pale. At that moment, a thick stench of blood came from within Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming did not even hesitate. He understood the connotations of the blood moon and had even calculated the days before it appeared. However, he did not expect it to appear earlier. He immediately turned around and crawled back into the cave. He knew that he could not find a place to hide once he was outside. There was no time for him to return to the tribe either. Once he returned to the cave, he immediately took out his horn and quickly cut through the wall beside him. It was as if he was struck by madness. The roaring sound within the cave was becoming clearer and there were even signs of other sounds amid the roar. Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot. Fortunately, he was used to the place and the horn was extremely sharp. Soon enough, he cut open a small hole and he crawled in immediately. Su Ming then blocked the entrance of the hole with the stones that fell out when he was cutting through the wall. He did not even mind the heat the hole emitted. The very moment he crawled into the hole, a gust of red mist rushed out from within the cave. Once it filled up the entire cave, it escaped through the tunnel with a rumble. Su Ming heard the sound clearly. Under the light of the blood moon, the 5 summits of Dark Mountain seemingly erupted like volcanoes. The rumbles shook the skies and a huge amount of red mist poured out from the summits. It seemed like the mist had been inside the 5 summits of Dark Mountain since the beginning of time. As it erupted from the mountains, the mist immediately covered the sky. The mist from Dark Dragon Mountain leaked out of the mountain from its cracks. Some even poured out from the place Su Ming obtained the Dark Dragon's saliva. If Su Ming looked closely, he would have noticed that the places the Dark Dragons avoided like the plague as they chased him around all those years, were the places where the red mist was the thickest. The other mountains were the same as Dark Dragon Mountain, especially Black Flame Mountain. The amount of mist that erupted from the mountain was shocking. As the mist spread around the place, a humming sound echoed. There were sounds of many wings flapping mixed in with the humming, creating a rhapsody of death, which terrified all who heard it. He saw red shadows coming out of the 5 summits along with the mist. There were also piercing roars echoing through the sky. The red shadows were strange beasts that had a pair of wings and red eyes each. They were the size of a palm and had 6 limbs. They also had human faces which were filled with madness and lust for blood. They were the wings of the moon. The number of the wings of the moon mounted to at least tens of thousands. They covered the skies until it was completely red. As they cried out, they rushed towards Black Mountain Tribe, Dark Mountain Tribe, Dark Dragon Tribe and all the places where wild beasts dwelt in the forest. They did not have a conscience. They were only fueled by resentment and a thirst for blood. They only knew how to kill and drink fresh blood, especially blood of the members of the Berserker tribe. It only further spurred their insanity. In fact, They sometimes skipped feasting on wild beasts and went straight for the berserker tribes. There was an uproar within Dark Mountain tribe. There were screams filled with terror echoing in the air. Chen Xin's face was pale as she held on tightly onto Bei Ling, who was beside her. Bei Ling's face too was pale. Lei Chen was standing further ahead, overcome by irritation. He wanted to find Su Ming, but he did not see him among the people within the settlement. As he was filled with worry for his friend, he was further taken aback by the scene in the sky. The terrified normal tribe members were silenced by the berserkers in the tribe. Gradually, all the people of tribe focused their gazes on the burning wooden stage and on the person who was looking at the sky. The elder's face was pale, but they could not see it due to the fire. His pupils were contracted. He saw the red mist and heard the mad cries coming from afar. How could this be? Not only did the blood moon appear earlier, even the wings of the moon have increased. There were only about thousands of them the last time. He took a sharp breath and shouted without hesitation. Normal members of the tribe, hide. Berserkers, take out all of the meat we have in store. Cut them open and wait for my orders. The elder's body trembled slightly. He lowered his head. He looked at the members of his tribe and closed his eyes. The same also happened in Dark Dragon tribe. Once Bai Ling and the other members of the tribe heard the elder's orders, the fear in their eyes increased. She would never forget what happened 9 years ago. When she was still a child, she saw her playmate being snatched away by numerous wings of the moon before her eyes. He disappeared into the mist as he cried and screamed. Once he was dragged into Dark Mountain, only a slow and painful death awaited him. The blood-red moon became a vague shadow in the sky as it was covered by the mist. However, the shadows that whistled through the mist were coming closer. The large number of wings of the moon split into 3 groups and sped towards the 3 tribes near them. In Dark Mountain tribe, the elder was staring at the sky. The moment the wings of the moon appeared, he swung the bone cane in his right hand. A lake of fire spread underneath him and covered the entire tribe, but the lake of fire did not burn any of the houses. It looked like an illusion surrounded the tribe. Throw the meat, the elder growled. Immediately the terrified berserkers within the tribe's settlement threw a bleeding creature towards the sky. Chapter 28. The Crying Sky. The very moment the elder of Dark Mountain tribe growled, the red mist spread out and covered the blood-red moon in the sky. A large number of wings of the moon screeched as they came and sped through the mist, covering the sky above Dark Mountain tribe. Piercing roars drowned out all the sounds in the land. It was the only sound that could be heard that night. Dozens of beasts drenched in blood were thrown into the air by the tribe members. Before they fell back to the ground, they were immediately swarmed by the wings of the moon that gathered upon them like bloody clouds. Amid the cries, the beasts' bodies were entirely covered by the wings of the moon and their flesh pierced through by sharp teeth. They turned into dried-up carcasses in an instant. Their blood and living bodies were devoured by the wings of the moon. All that was left were only skin and bones. They crashed onto the ground and twitched helplessly before they all died. Some of the numerous wings of the moon in the sky even ignored the beasts tossed into the air. They plunged straight towards the tribe members. Their eyes were filled with ruthlessness and a thirst for blood. Their targets were the berserkers within the tribe. Screams, cries and roars collided with each other. They resonated with the screeches made by the wings of the moon on that strange night. The lake of fire that surrounded the entire tribe was like a solid barrier. It caused the wings of the moon that approached the tribe to retreat with a cry. It seemed that the fire, which could not even burn the houses, could actually cause them mortal damage. Again, the elder stood within the lake of fire and looked at the sky gravely. Immediately more tribe members tossed even more beasts into the air in the midst of their fear. It did look like they were feeding and offering sacrifices to the crazed wings of the moon in the sky. Time passed by. All of the creatures stored for winter had become food for the wings of the moon and fell back onto the ground like mummies. Driven by madness caused by their lust for blood, they started diving downwards. It seemed like an attempt to break through the lake of fire and descend upon the tribe to feast on the blood of the berserkers. The elder waved his right hand and the lake of fire turned into a giant vortex that spun rapidly in the sky. He was going up against the wings of the moon in the sky by himself. At the same time, arrows upon arrows pierced through the lake of fire and into the sky from the tribe to fight against the wings of the moon. To the wings of the moon that were pretty much immortal, this sort of injury was nothing to them. Their flapping wings and piercing cries made the people in Dark Mountain Tribe panic. Before long, some wings of the moon broke through the lake of fire and flew into the tribe, causing chaos within Dark Mountain Tribe. The same also happened in Dark Dragon Tribe. However, a strange sight happened within Black Mountain Tribe. All of the members of the tribe prostrated on the ground and remained still. In the sky, the elder of Black Mountain Tribe, Baitu, stretched his arms wide open. His face looked crazy with fanaticism as he stared at the sky, chanting. Numerous wings of the moon circled around him. There were also a large number of them on him. Their fangs sunk into his flesh and they drank his blood. Yet Baitu appeared to have lost all sense of pain. He did not resist. Instead, the crazed fanaticism on his face grew even more. As his face became paler due to the loss of blood, the strange chant became louder. I sacrifice my blood to you, O ancient fire berserker tribe. You have obtained immortality and have turned into wings of the moon. You feast upon the berserker blood, and now I will take the blood of the fire berserkers into my veins. Di Hong Ladong. Baitu bellowed, facing the skies, and immediately, a piercing black light erupted from his body. As the black light spread out from his body, the wings of the moon on his body screamed. Their bodies started shriveling and the light in their eyes started dimming. After a moment, they fell off Baitu's body as they lost all signs of life. It drove more wings of the moon wild. The process repeated itself. A large amount of blood from the wings of the moon was absorbed by Baitu. His body began to swell at an alarming speed and a thick presence of qi erupted from his body. The moment they sensed the presence of the qi, not only did those wings of the moon become even more frantic, even the ones that went to Dark Mountain Tribe as well as Dark Dragon Tribe changed their direction and flew towards Black Mountain Tribe. Not far away from Black Mountain Tribe, stood the figure of a person wrapped entirely in a black robe. He stood out among all the people of Black Mountain Tribe who lay prostrated on the ground. The black robe he wore was also not something that could be found in the small tribes around the area. As he stood there, he looked at the elder of Black Mountain Tribe in the air, his lips curling up into a dark smile. I gave you the way to find the moon stones necessary to summon the wings of the moon made of the fire berserker. I also taught you the way to summon them. I told you the quickest way to arrive at the awakening realm. Your success is up to you now. Compared to the chaos outside, Su Ming was relatively safe. He pushed away the stones that covered the hole in the cave and jumped out. There were several spots on his skin that had blistered due to the heat. His lips were dry and cracked as his heart pounded against his chest. I can't believe this is one of the resting places of the wings of the moon. Su Ming stared at the spot where the wings of the moon appeared in the cave. He heard many legends regarding the wings of the moon since he was young and knew just how terrifying they were. The legends about how they were almost immortal also made Su Ming narrow his eyes in fear. After a moment of silence, he crawled out of the entrance of the cave slowly. As he was near the exit, he stuck out his head quickly and looked around. The sight made him gasp. The sky was covered by red mist and an uncountable amount of wings of the moon circled the sky, the sound of their roars echoing. Su Ming immediately retreated into the cave. I wonder what happened to the tribe. I can't go back now. If I leave now, the wings of the moon will definitely find me. Su Ming frowned. He was feeling very agitated and worried about the tribe. Even so, he knew that he had no way to solve the problem. He looked at the place within the cave, where the wings of the moon appeared. Slowly, a glint appeared in his eyes. The number of wings of the moon is obviously a lot of more than the previous times. By the looks of it, the deeper parts of the cave should be empty now. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before walking forward slowly. After he stepped over the place he used for quenching and observed the deeper parts of the cave, he decided. I might as well see what's in there that allowed the wings of the moon to stay here for so long. I might be able to find their secret and tell the elder. It might be of some help to him. Su Ming then ran towards the deeper parts of the cave that he had not explored before. It was odd. The cave was usually hot. There were even times when Su Ming felt as if there were hot waves crashing onto him. However, as Su Ming went deeper into the cave, he no longer felt any heat. Instead, he felt a chill coming from within the cave. As Su Ming continued walking deeper, there was another uproar amid the three tribes on Dark Mountain. Several hundreds of the wings of the moon had already penetrated the lake of fire protecting Dark Mountain tribe. They dived towards the tribe members and fought against the berserkers. Bei Ling's eyes grew cold as he protected Chen Xin, who stood behind him. A cold wave spread out of his right hand, forming sharp icicles around them. There were a lot of wounds on his body and blood poured freely out of his body. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and focused on a point far away. He reached for the bow on his back with his right hand without any hesitation. As Bei Ling took the bow, a strong killing intent came forth. He drew the bow with his left hand and the tip of the bow gleamed. Immediately, the snow around them gathered at the tip of the bow and he shot an ice arrow towards the direction he was looking at. Some distance away, Lei Chen was overwhelmed by a lust for blood. There were numerous wings of the moon on his body but he did not care. Instead, he seemed to be taken over by madness as he grabbed one of them and tried to bite it. "You want to suck my blood? Fine, I'll suck yours too." Just as he was about to bite down on the wings of the moon in his grasp, he noticed there were dozens more flying towards him. With his current level, there was no way he could fight against so many of them. At that moment though, a cold blast of air rushed towards him. As the cold wind appeared, an arrow made of snow and ice exploded on top of Lei Chen with a bang. It caused all the wings of the moon on top of Lei Chen to fall, saving him in the process. Lei Chen was surprised. He turned and looked at Bei Ling, who was coolly putting aside his bow. An indescribable expression appeared across Lei Chen's eyes. The chi of the tribe leader of Dark Mountain tribe was rolling off his body like waves. In his hands was a long silver spear. Every time he threw the spear, cries would echo throughout the sky as numerous chi waves hit the air, causing the wings of the moon to spread out. Even so, the number of wings of the moon that rushed down was too many. Some of the normal members of the tribe were even nearly captured by some of them. That moment, the elder acted. He swung the bone cane in his hands and the entire tribe trembled. An illusion of a giant statue of the god of berserkers formed in midair. The statue's eyes were filled with ruthlessness as if it was alive. The dragon in its hands even lifted its head and roared. Then it flew into the sky and swept through its surroundings. As time passed, the night of the blood-red moon slowly went by but the battle in the tribe became even more intense. Some wings of the moon captured a few members of the berserker tribe alive instead of sucking their blood near the end of the battle. They intended to bring the members back to their lair and suck out their blood. As light started to brighten up the sky, a piercing cry sliced through the air from Dark Dragon tribe. Among the numerous wings of the moon was a white figure. Her beautiful face was pale and filled with despair as she was captured along with her other tribe members by the wings of the moon. They were flying back towards Dark Mountain. Behind them, an old woman wearing sackcloth chased after them desperately. As their cries of terror continued traveling away from Dark Dragon tribe, the old woman's eyes became bloodshot and were filled with despair before long. She turned around and gave up on the chase. She chose instead to go back and defend her tribe. When the person in white saw this, tears escaped her eyes. As her tears fell, they disappeared without anyone noticing. As daylight arrived and the blood-red moon disappeared, the tens of thousands of wings of the moon let out a huge cry and flew back towards Dark Mountain from all directions. Some of them carried the girl in white and her other tribe members towards Black Flame Mountain. They entered through the cracks. Chapter 29. The Ancient Tribe. Su Ming walked forward into the deeper parts slowly and carefully. He remained alert on the way and regularly made sure the coast was clear before he moved further. As he moved, he also held onto the horn and activated the chi in his body. He prepared himself to fight with the power of all 11 blood veins at all times. He also searched for possible hiding places along the way so that he could hide himself when there was any danger or when the wings of the moon suddenly returned. Su Ming was filled with curiosity towards the unknown, but his cautiousness kept his curiosity in check. It was especially so in such a dangerous place. As he moved forward, the cave colder. As the crossroads increased, Su Ming's speed also increased. It was completely dark around him. There were also a lot of cracks on the walls. By the looks of it, they were caused by years of heating. However, Su Ming noticed that some cracks were just recently formed. The color on those walls were different from the others. That's odd. These cracks must have just been formed recently. Just what kind of energy could have caused the walls to form new cracks? An answer began to form in Su Ming's head. Could it be because of the sudden cooling of the strong heat, causing an unimaginable force of energy to explode? Su Ming scratched his head. He did not think too deeply into it, but he remembered it. He did not know how long he walked, but it felt like a long time. Suddenly, he stopped. The cave before him had obviously become much bigger. In fact, the deeper he went, the wider it became. Have I arrived at the deeper parts of the cave? Su Ming scrutinized his surroundings and walked forward slowly. Before long, the cave before him grew wider. When he arrived at the end, Su Ming took a deep breath and started thinking as he absorbed the sights before him. Before him was a cave the size of his tribe. There were dozens of other small holes around the cave. The hole Su Ming exited from was one of them. In his silence, Su Ming went forward, his eyes bright. He looked at the other small holes in the cave. Then he narrowed his eyes and leapt forward, stopping at the entrance of each hole in the cave to take a sniff. Once he went through all the small holes, Su Ming stared at one of them. Without any hesitation, he crawled in. Among the small caves, only this one had a faint stench of blood. It was obvious that the wings of the moon flew out from this hole. As he ran, Su Ming stopped at times to think. As he did so, he would slice off a big chunk of rock from the walls around him using the horn. The rock was about as tall as the tunnel. It was bothersome, but Su Ming insisted on doing it. Su Ming cut out a few rocks of the same size as he moved forward. Each time he sliced them out, he would place them aside once he positioned them properly. Gradually, Su Ming's speed increased. He still kept his guard up. He could tell that he was going towards the bottom of the mountain. That was why the area was becoming bigger. Su Ming continued running downwards. It was not until he felt that he had run a long distance before he gradually saw a red light before him. The red light was like fire, but he could not determine what it was. When he saw the fire-like red light, Su Ming slowed down. His heart pounded against his chest. Somewhere in his mind, he felt that he was near the end. As he drew near, he had a hunch that the blood in his body was going to boil. It was not a feeling he was unfamiliar with. The rocks on the walls had numerous scratches. There were also some bite marks on the rocks. It created a strange atmosphere that made Su Ming nervous. Nonetheless, he did not stop. Alternatively, he walked towards the red light. It was indeed the end of the tunnel. Instead of a road ahead, there was a giant fire cave in its place. Su Ming remained alert. He stood at the exit and looked downwards. As he did, he stood there stunned as if he was struck by lightning. Then he instinctively took a few steps back, drawing a sharp breath. There was a giant basin in the cave. Within the basin were numerous stalagmites as sharp as thorns. They were shaped like hills. The thorny structures were entirely gray, but they constantly emitted a chilly wind which surrounded the area. The temperature in the cave dropped to freezing cold. That did not really affect Su Ming. No, what astonished Su Ming was what he found covered by the cold thorns within the basin. It was a tribe. There were numerous houses made of stone, a barricade and a watchtower made of stone. Su Ming even saw stone pots used to cook rice scattered everywhere in the tribe. On the walls outside of each house, was a picture of what looked like a blazing fire. All of the houses made of stone were huge and built in an orderly manner. They looked much more luxurious compared to the houses in Dark Mountain Tribe. Su Ming even saw roads made of stone. There were a large number of protruding stones on some of the smaller paths as well. Su Ming took a long time observing them, but he still had no clue what the small pavements were for. It was not a normal tribe or a complete tribe. Su Ming's gaze fell upon some of the houses at the edge of the tribe's settlement. Those houses seemed to be split apart by a mysterious force. Only half of them remained within the basin. As for the other half, no one knew where they went. It was especially so on the tribal grounds. Besides the stone pavements, the other parts looked like dirt, forming a clear difference between the stones in the mountain. Su Ming's breathing quickened. As he marveled at the sight before him, he remembered what the elder once said, the legend of the Fire Berserker tribe. Gradually, a picture began forming in his head. In this picture, he saw a gigantic tribe which seemed to span endlessly across the land. All the houses in the tribe were made of stone and on their walls were the emblems of a blazing fire. The emblem represented the name of the tribe. However, one day, a change occurred within the tribe. It was split apart by an unknown force like it was shattered. The unknown force also scattered the tribe and its members along with the land it was built upon. They were all forced apart. A small part of the tribe and the land shifted into Dark Mountain. That wasn't a legend. Su Ming looked at the bizarre and incredible sight before him. He swept his gaze across the tribe, and when he looked at the center of the tribe, he narrowed his eyes. There was an even stranger thing in the middle. It was a giant tree, or more accurately, it looked like a giant tree. The entire thing was blazing red and it emitted a light which looked like fire. The light Su Ming saw from the tunnel was from this giant tree. The tree was as thick as dozens of grown men. Its roots had penetrated the ground and looked as if they went deep into the ground. No one knew how deeply they went. Only the tree trunk was visible. The top of the tree had already penetrated the top of the cave. Only part of the tree was visible. A tree growing within Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming stared at the tree. Over there, he saw some familiar red flowers displaying their enchanting beauty. As he looked at the red flowers, Su Ming remembered the strange sights he saw at the swamp in the forest. Su Ming averted his gaze in his silence and looked at the ruins of the tribe that had been buried within the passages of time. A sudden sadness formed in his chest. He sighed and jumped down to stand amid the ruins of one of the 8 great berserker tribes. The Fire Berserker tribe had fought against the god of berserkers. Then, the wings of the moon must also be as depicted in the legends. They are the changed form of the Fire Berserker tribe that had been granted immortality by the Fire Berserker elders' berserker art, but, this is unbelievable. How could such an art truly exist? Just how strong was the Fire Elder of the Fire Berserker tribe? It's mentioned in the Beast Skin Scroll that after the Blood Solidification realm is the Awakening realm, and after the Awakening realm is the Bone Sacrifice realm. There was no mention of what comes after the Bone Sacrifice realm though. The practitioners are only known as Berserker Masters. As Su Ming looked at the ruins of the tribe before his eyes in silence, he began walking forward. The tribe was empty. Besides the houses and some stuff scattered around, Su Ming did not even see any bones lying around. The silence was suffocating. He stepped quietly onto the small pavement, filled with protruding stones. When he stepped on them, he felt them pricking his feet. He lowered his head and looked at the pavement, but he still could not figure out their use. He walked forward slowly but stopped suddenly as he caught a glimpse of something from the corner of his eyes. He turned his head towards the direction and saw a corpse hanging on the wall. It was at the border where the tribe had been cut away. The corpse was hidden by some of the houses, which was why Su Ming did not see it initially. However, as he stood there, he could see it clearly then. The moment he saw the skeleton, Su Ming narrowed his eyes. This was the only corpse he saw at the place. He walked towards the corpse quickly. When he looked at it closely, Su Ming shivered. The corpse was very strange. Its top half was that of a person, but it was shriveled up. The lower half of the corpse was even stranger. It looked as if it had melted away and mutated. It was different from the skeletal frame of a normal person. The frame of a pair of wings also seemed to materialize on its back. Looking at the corpse, it even looked similar to the wings of the moon. It was as though the person experienced a change in his form before his death. He imagined the pain of a person changing into wings of the moon, but there was no shred of pain in the corpse's face. Instead, there was only mockery and pride on his face. It was unknown who he was mocking. The index finger on his right hand had pierced into the stone wall by his side. Su Ming lifted his head to look at the stone wall by the corpse's side, and he saw a clear string of words on the wall. They were the words of the Berserker tribe. The moment Su Ming looked at them, the sound of wings flapping traveled through the entrance of the tunnel. There were bone-chilling roars mixed in between. Su Ming could even vaguely hear cries of despair among the sounds of flapping and roaring. The wings of the moon have returned. Su Ming's expression immediately changed. Chapter 30. Cries of Sadness. The sound of the wings flapping seemed about ready to cause a storm in the otherwise silent cave, housing the ruins of the tribe. Su Ming's eyes were bright with trepidation, but he did not move. Sounds of flapping wings and piercing shrieks echoed in his ears, but Su Ming knew just how long the tunnels were. Even if the sounds arrived first, there would be some time left before the wings of the moon actually returned. There might not have been a lot of time left, but it was still enough for him to make his escape. Su Ming did not hesitate. He cast his gaze on the words carved into the wall that the strange corpse was leaning against. "Wherefore doth thou wail, O blue sky?" These were the very first words carved into the wall. The handwriting was filled with strength and masculinity, revealing a shred of insolence and truculence. Su Ming narrowed his eyes the moment he saw those words. Su Ming did not truly understand their meaning and could only grasp the basic gist of it. Despite that, he could still feel the sadness and aloofness in the words. "Wherefore doth thou cry, O blue sky?" Su Ming mumbled. Then he looked at the other lines on the wall. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. "Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes, if, be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep bethought as the fire in mine blood burns, the 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Thou who control the heavens, only thou art capable of persecuting me." The words underneath were obviously carved by the same person, but it was no longer a lament. They were words that were difficult to understand. "Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire." Su Ming frowned. These particular lines were hard to fathom. Su Ming read them again, but even so, he still only got the basic gist of it. As he was thinking, the piercing roars and sound of flapping wings became louder in his ears as they echoed through the tunnel not far away. Su Ming did not linger any longer but ran towards the tunnel quickly. He was already in the tunnel, in the blink of an eye. As he stood there, the piercing roars became even clearer. Su Ming turned back and looked at the desolate tribe once more, then ran into the tunnel swiftly. As he ran, he paid attention to the volume of the roars. When he was dozens of feet into the tunnel, Su Ming stopped and crawled into the crack on the wall next to him. The crack was not big, but Su Ming was tiny to begin with, so he had no problems getting in there. Once he crawled in, he immediately squatted down and stilled his breathing. Using the wall as a hiding spot, Su Ming peeked out of the crack and waited silently as his heart pounded against his chest. Su Ming counted the time by his breaths. After 10 breaths, he felt goosebumps covering his entire body. He saw thick red mist rolling into the tunnel like an explosion. Within the mist were red shadows flying past as it let out thunderous roars. The red shadows were wings of the moon. Looking at the wings of the moon at such a close distance made Su Ming's heart beat even faster, but he did not move an inch. He even narrowed his eyes to a slit to avoid any light reflecting off his eyes. A huge number of wings of the moon kept swarming into the tunnel. One of them even crashed into the edges of the crack, and it was just about half a feet away from where Su Ming squatted down. Su Ming held onto the horn so tightly with his right hand that his knuckles turned white. At that moment, he could not even feel his own heartbeat. It was as if he had calmed down completely despite the extremely stressful situation he was in. He stared at the wings of the moon that crashed into the wall. As he looked at its horrifying face and flapping wings, it flew out of the crack. Su Ming did not let his guard down. If anything, it made him even more wary. At that moment, he heard cries filled with despair. Su Ming peeked out of the crack and saw the silhouette of a few people captured by the wings of the moon in the mist, being brought back to the tribe. There were 9 of them. Su Ming could not see all 9 of them clearly, but, as he swept his gaze across them, he saw a person in white, and her beautiful face was filled with despair and desolation. "It's her." Su Ming narrowed his eyes. The person in white was the girl from Dark Dragon Tribe he and Lei Chen met at the square, Bai Ling. Su Ming fell silent. Time trickled by slowly. Before long, the sounds in the tunnel gradually dispersed. Even the mist had largely dissipated. It was as though all the wings of the moon had returned to their nests as the blood-red moon left the sky, as though they were all about to return to slumber. A hot wave of heat immediately spread throughout the tunnel, replacing the cold. Even the crack in the wall was beginning to heat up swiftly. Su Ming heard crackling sounds, and right before his eyes he saw new cracks forming on the walls of the mountain cave. So this is how the cracks are formed. Su Ming stood up quickly and approached the cracks. As he stood in the tunnel, he could feel the mist becoming thinner. Waves of heat crashed into him from where the tribe was, causing him to be covered in sweat. The stones on the ground also grew hotter. Su Ming could even feel the ground burning the soles of his feet as he stood there. He clearly knew that very soon, he was not going to be able to withstand the heat in the place. He contemplated on leaving or staying. There was a hint of hesitation on Su Ming's face. Wretched moans traveled through the tunnel. Anyone who heard them would have trembled in their shoes. I already lied to her at the square with Lei Chen. My consciousness won't allow me to leave just like that. Su Ming was still an honest child deep down. He took a deep breath of hot air and ran towards the end of the tunnel. If I can save her, I will. If I can't, then at least I won't regret it. Su Ming's eyes were resolute as he held onto his horn. The closer he got to the end of the tunnel, the more he felt the heat in the place increasing at maddening speed. Fortunately, the distance was close. Before long, Su Ming arrived at the end of the tunnel. Without bothering about the heat on the walls of the cave, he pressed his body against it and peeped into the cave. His eyes immediately shone with a dim light. Su Ming saw 7 people who were still alive, struggling on the sharp stalagmites situated on top the ruins of the tribe in the gigantic basin. Their stomachs were pierced through by 7 sharp stalagmites, and their blood flowed down the stakes. They were still not dead and were letting out cries of agony as they felt the life seeping out of their bodies. All 7 of these people were men. Su Ming looked at them closely and let out a sigh of relief. He knew none of the 7, so it was clear that they were not people from Dark Mountain tribe. The other sharp stalagmites around them were melting. As they melted, a huge amount of red magma covered the land like a river. As he saw that, Su Ming inhaled deeply. He finally understood the purpose of the sharp stalagmites. This place is really strange. Perhaps the wings of the moon's awakening and departure are related to the sharp stalagmites. Su Ming thought. The sharp stalagmites were probably formed from the magma for some unknown reason occasionally but not for long. After the wings of the moon returned, they would melt and return to magma. With the amount of stalagmites I saw just now, when they melt completely the basin will be completely filled. The tribe will be hidden once more underneath the magma. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at small red trunk which looked like a big tree located at the center of the tribe. The tree also showed signs of melting under the extreme heat in the basin. It was moving around oddly. If Su Ming had looked closely, he would have seen that there were red lines surrounding the tree. Sometimes, a part of it would fall off. It was clear that it was a wings of the moon. However, the wings of the moon that returned to the tree no longer had ferocious looks on their faces. As a replacement, were looks of pain, desolation and sadness. They did not continue screaming but they looked as if they were crying silently. Some wings of the moon were even gesticulating weirdly. They kept lifting their claws and biting them to draw blood in the midst of their sorrow. They wiped their claws on their eyes but there was no blood in the bitten claws. Those wings of the moon crawled into the tree. What are they doing? Su Ming stared at the tree. As he was thinking, he felt the heat climbing up even more. He could not stay there any longer. I can't find her, too bad. Su Ming shook his head. He tried his best. Just as he was about to leave, he stopped. His gaze fell upon the red tree branch situated at the center of the basin. 2 faces appeared on the tree. One of them, he did not know but the other was Bai Ling. Bai Ling's eyes were empty and void of life as if she had already given up. At that moment, she looked like a mournful beauty. Su Ming looked at her face, then at the magma gathering slowly downwards. Most of the stalagmites had already melted into magma and had risen about half the height of the houses in the tribe. The only things visible within the basin were the roofs of the houses. Even the roofs were turning into a hot shade of red. The wings of the moon appear when the blood-red moon is in the sky. But judging by the situation here, they should also be connected with the heat in this place. They're really afraid of heat, that's why they will only go out and hunt when this place becomes cold. When they come back, they will all crawl into the tree. None of them will be outside. All of this is proof of my theory. Su Ming did not act recklessly but he stood there as his eyes flashed brilliantly. I should be able to save her, but I still need to wait a bit longer. Su Ming stared at the tree and occasionally looked at the height of the magma down in the basin. After a while, the heat in the place increased once more. It caused Su Ming to sweat continuously. His skin also showed signs of crying and cracking. The qi in his entire body boiled as he manifested all 11 blood veins. Su Ming jumped down. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming landed on one of the roofs in the basin. The moment he landed, he heard a sizzling sound. White smoke immediately came out underneath his feet. Su Ming did not stop. He jumped again and landed on another rood. After a few leaps, he was near the strange red tree. Just as he was about to reach the tree, Su Ming saw the unknown girl beside Bai Ling shriveling as she let out an agonizing scream. Instantly, she became a pile of bones. It was like she became one with the tree. Her life and all her flesh were absorbed by some mysterious force. Chapter 31. Wherefore doth thou cry, O blue sky? The sudden sight stunned Su Ming, but he did not stop. Instead, he ran even faster. That was simply how Su Ming was. Either he would stay away from something, or he would finish what he had started. The very moment he went near the tree, Bai Ling's eyes, which had previously been void of life, focused on him. She stared at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression. As she stared, tears escaped her eyes. There was no hint of hesitation when Su Ming approached the tree. He lifted the horn in his right hand and stabbed the red tree. When half of the horn sank into the tree, a dark red liquid that looked like blood flowed out. A muffled scream also came out from within. It was a scream filled with rage. It was so powerful, it shook the entire basin. Su Ming's face was pale, but his eyes were cold. When the horn pierced the tree, he pulled it downwards abruptly. A giant crack appeared on the tree. A cold gust of air immediately gushed forth from the crack. The crack practically appeared beside Bai Ling. Once the crack opened up, Su Ming saw Bai Ling's body inside. He did not hesitate and pushed his hand into the tree to grab Bai Ling's arm inside. Then with a low growl, he yanked her out. With just a yank, he managed to bring Bai Ling's body out of the tree. Bai Ling was shocked. She looked at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression and allowed Su Ming to pull her. More tears escaped her eyes. At that moment, Su Ming's face was deeply ingrained in her mind. With Bai Ling in his grasp, Su Ming immediately jumped backwards. His heart was pounding against his chest. Just as he was about to leave, the screams grew much stronger and filled the entire basin. From the crack on the tree, dozens of wings of the moon appeared. The sadness and desolation on their faces were replaced with madness and bloodlust as they flew out of the crack. Su Ming felt his skin crawl. He immediately retreated. There were just too many wings of the moon. They were lined up so densely. Su Ming guessed that there were about thousands of them coming right at him and Bai Ling. There were even more wings of the moon within the tree. However, just as the wings of the moon were about to chase after them, Su Ming saw the waves of heat crashing into them. Their faces were filled with terror. Some of them even froze and fell into the magma. They broke apart and shattered into pieces like stones. There was neither blood nor flesh. Only a gust of cold air rose from where they shattered. The legend of the immortal fire berserker tribe who were turned into wings of the moon is true. They originally did not fear fire, but once they changed into wings of the moon, they experienced a mysterious mutation and became afraid of fire. By the looks of it, their bodies are as cold as ice. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. As he retreated, he threw Bai Ling towards the entrance of the nearby tunnel with his left hand. "Why are you still daydreaming? Run!" Su Ming growled at her. Bai Ling snapped out of her stupor as if she just woke up from a nightmare. The moment her body landed at the entrance of the tunnel, she turned around and looked at Su Ming. Just as she was about to speak, "Run!" Su Ming ran towards the entrance of the tunnel. The magma in the basin had already covered all of the houses in the tribe. There were only a handful of roofs left. Bai Ling's face was pale. She hesitated no longer and turned before running into the tunnel. Her legs were in pain, but she ignored it. The only thought in her mind right then was to escape from the place. Su Ming jumped on the few rooftops left and headed straight for the tunnel. Behind him, a large number of wings of the moon screamed, but they did not dare give chase. The muffled cries and roars from the tree made the wings of the moon even more hysterical. A few dozen of them even went straight for Su Ming with no regard of the heat. The qi in Su Ming's body was boiling. The 11 blood veins spread across his body. When the wings of the moon came, he swung the horn in his hand and rushed towards the tunnel. All of this happened within a short period of time. Nonetheless, when Su Ming arrived at the tunnel, some of the wings of the moon that had chased after him fell and shattered on the magma. Su Ming's heart was pounding quickly, but he was calm. Everything was going according to plan. If he had decided to wait a bit longer and the magma grew even thicker before he acted, things would not have been so easy. More wings of the moon would have in fact chased after him. As he stepped into the tunnel, Su Ming's feet were giving off a stench of burnt flesh. Despite that, he did not stop. He ran even quicker instead. Behind him, all the wings of the moon in the basin roared, but they did not pursue. Still, there were some who managed to charge into the tunnel in spite of the deaths of their many comrades. They rushed at Su Ming. The wings of the moon are afraid of heat, that's why they do not dare to come out from the tree. But the closer we are outside, the more the heat will also decrease. As Su Ming ran, the screeches behind him grew clearer. I have to kill all the wings of the moon that come after us. They must not remain. Su Ming looked at the big stone he previously cut out when he came in. He immediately ran towards it. With horn in hand, he turned and saw 4 wings of the moon rushing towards him with savage looks on their faces. The sound of their flapping wings becoming louder. Su Ming's face was pale, but his eyes were calm. Just as the 4 wings of the moon were about to reach him, Su Ming kicked the big stone. He measured the size of the stone previously. It was approximately the same size as the tunnel. As he kicked the stone by focusing all of the power of his chi to his leg, the stone flew up and blocked the tunnel like a door. Su Ming always had impeccable timing. According to his calculations, the stone door could hold back 3 wings of the moon temporarily. As for the remaining one, he would kill it with the horn in his hands, using the heat in the tunnel to his advantage. However, the wings of the moon were simply too fast. The stone barricade Su Ming made only managed to stop 2 of them. The other 2 made it past the barricade and rushed towards him. Su Ming frowned and immediately ran forward. Even if he could kill the 2 wings of the moon, he would be injured. Besides, he still had a better plan. As he ran, the speed of the wings of the moon's pursuit increased. Less than 100 feet away from him was another stone of the same size. As he ran past the stone, Su Ming used his previous experience and kicked the stone. With a loud crash, the stone flew up and blocked the tunnel. It held back one of them while the other escaped. Just as the other one rushed towards Su Ming, the cold glare in Su Ming's eyes thickened. He did not retreat any longer but chose to charge forward with the horn in his hand. The man in abomination immediately battled in the tunnel. If Su Ming did not walk in the ways of the berserker, he would not have been able to resist, much less fight. However, he had already manifested 11 blood veins. He was also equipped with an extremely sharp horn. He had a complete upper hand in the battle against the wings of the moon. Su Ming stabbed the wings of the moon and he immediately jumped away. Nevertheless, the wound left on its body recovered quickly. The wings of the moon only looked slightly sluggish but showed no signs of being anywhere near death. Su Ming narrowed his eyes and quickly cut a few more wounds on the creature so it was unable to recover within a short period of time. He quickly turned and ran away. As he ran, he would kick the stones he had placed in the tunnel earlier whenever he saw them. They became obstructions in the tunnel for the wings of the moon. While he did stop to kick the stones, Su Ming took pride in his speed. In the span of just a few breaths, he sped through the tunnel and reached the area of the cave surrounded by many other small holes. I'm here. The moment he arrived, Su Ming heard Bai Ling calling out to him weakly. He saw Bai Ling hiding in one of the small holes with a pale and terrified face. She was shaking. Bai Ling arrived a long time ago, but she did not know where the exit was. She did not dare move around recklessly, afraid that she would run into the wings of the moon again. The Bai Ling before Su Ming's eyes was not the proud and witty girl in the square. She was like a frightened little animal. When he saw the anxiety in her eyes, Su Ming laughed. How can you still laugh? Bai Ling was very nervous. She was about to continue speaking when Su Ming approached her quickly and grabbed her arm, running towards one of the many holes nearby. This is the exit, she whispered softly to him. For some reason, after Bai Ling looked at Su Ming, her fears decreased. Su Ming nodded his head. He did not speak. Instead, he grabbed Bai Ling's arm and ran towards the tunnel at full speed. He could hear Bai Ling panting. The sound was very pleasant to the ears. Su Ming's heartbeat quickened. He did not know whether it was due to the running or the soft skin he was touching in his hand. Bai Ling did not speak again. She let Su Ming hold her hand as they ran through the dangerous tunnels. Her heart pounded against her chest and gradually, she felt the same way as Su Ming. The emotion allowed her fears and despair to dissipate. However, the silence did not last long. Soon, Su Ming brought Bai Ling back to the place he used for the quenching of herbs. When they arrived, Su Ming released her hand and he cut through the tiny holes on the ground using the horn. They seemed to be lighting up with fire. In the middle of it, he would sometimes frown as if he was thinking about something. There was also fire burning underneath the cauldron not far ahead. Bai Ling watched Su Ming's actions with increasing anxiety. Even then, she felt like it was all a dream. She had fallen into despair when she was captured by the wings of the moon. Yet the things that happened when Su Ming arrived made her think she was dreaming. At that moment, ear-splitting shrieks traveled from the deep within the cave and became stronger as time passed by. They were approaching at an extremely quick speed. Bai Ling shivered and moved closer to Su Ming instinctively. Before she could get any closer, Su Ming grabbed her hand and immediately went past the small holes as he looked back at the cave. Not long after, the volume of the shrieks increased exponentially and 3 wings of the moon flew towards them ferociously. Bai Ling quivered. She was about to retreat when Su Ming brought his horn out. He cracked open the ground where the fire flowed towards the cauldron, connecting the crack with another ravine. A fire curtain immediately rose from the ground. Its strength was akin to a sea of fire. The 3 wings of the moon who were rushing towards them were enveloped by the sea of fire. Mournful cries rang through the air. They crashed onto the ground and shattered. A cold gust of wind gushed out from their remains and mixed with the fire. Su Ming's face was somber under the fire's illumination. Bai Ling, who stood behind him, became even more terrified. They're afraid of fire? Bai Ling asked softly after a while. They worshipped fire when they were still human. Fire was their glory, but when they were turned into wings of the moon, not only did they lose their conscience and their bodies, they also lost their glory. They were not afraid of fire after they lost their glory. No, they felt guilty towards it. They lived by fire and they died by fire, Su Ming muttered. He remembered the one line he saw when he stood in the ruins of the fire berserker tribe. Wherefore doth thou cry, O blue sky? Chapter 32. Those beautiful days. Su Ming closed his eyes. The scenes he saw that night weighed heavy against his chest and tightened around his heart. It was a desolate and sad kind of feeling. Just who was that corpse in fire berserker tribe? Why was he the only one who managed to end his own life before he turned into a wings of the moon? Perhaps he was one of the stronger berserkers in fire berserker tribe. As Su Ming recalled the strange corpse in his head, he sighed, then turned his attention to the thing that occupied his mind even more, the complicated words he saw. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies. Let fire burn heaven into ashes. If be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep bethought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Su Ming did not understand what the words meant. While he was thinking about them, he saw Bai Ling standing by his side. She was looking at her surroundings. Her gaze was curious. It was clear that she was unaware of the place's purpose. Let's go, Miss Bai Ling. Su Ming smiled slightly and crawled out of the cave through the entrance. Bai Ling quickly followed him. She had wanted to leave a long time ago. Every breath she spent at the place made her feel uncomfortable. The moment they got out of the tunnel, a gust of wind immediately brushed against their skins. They felt like they were about to be blown away by the storm. Bai Ling's face was pale as she held onto a rock next to her. She had been pampered as she grew up in the tribe and practically never climbed such a mountain before. Even if she gritted her teeth to endure it, her increasingly ashen face exposed her fears. Su Ming looked at Bai Ling. He had never seen a girl of her beauty before. Her pale face especially made her look delicate. It's fine, I'll carry you. Su Ming scratched his head but his heart was starting beat quicker. You. Bai Ling hesitated for a moment, then looked at the bottom of the mountain. It looked like an endless abyss. Finally, she nodded her head. Su Ming's spirits were lifted and he squatted down in front of Bai Ling. Bai Ling blushed as she climbed onto Su Ming's back silently. Her arms found their way around Su Ming's neck instinctively. Su Ming blinked. She was a soft presence on his back. He could also clearly smell a nice fragrance wafting into his nostrils. He took a deep breath as an indescribable feeling blossomed in his chest. Hey, hold on tight. If you fall, don't blame me, Su Ming said instinctively. However, he did not hear any sound coming from his back. After a moment of hesitation, he shifted his focus on climbing down the mountain. With his agility and familiarity with the mountain, carrying someone would not have affected his speed too much. Yet, for some reason today, Su Ming only took the steep paths. Sometimes, he would even jump down, making the person on his back scream. Then he would grab onto some rocks or vines as he fell. When he felt the delicate person on his back holding onto him tighter, a pleased expression appeared on Su Ming's face. The time required to descend from the top to the foot of Black Flame Mountain was actually quite short, but Su Ming spent an entire 2 hours to climb down. When Bai Ling got off his back, her face was entirely red and her eyes were filled with fear. Su Ming felt a slight hint of pity that this whole thing had ended. He coughed into his hand and looked at Bai Ling. We're in the forest now. The snow is very thick here. There are also quite a lot of traps placed here. There's also some distance left before you can reach Dark Dragon Tribe. It'll be dangerous for you go back alone. How about this? I'll escort you to Dark Dragon Tribe first, then I'll go back home. Su Ming spoke slowly and kept an eye on Bai Ling's expression. When he saw that Bai Ling hesitated, joy blossomed in his chest and he quickly spoke again. But the road back to your place is rather difficult to travel. Look, I don't mind carrying you on my back again. This way, we can save time and I can go back home faster too. Su Ming frowned and spoke once he looked at the sky. Then, Bai Ling bit her lip as her cheeks flushed red again. She could tell he did everything earlier on purpose when they were descending from Black Flame Mountain. If it continued, her eyes flashed with anger due to the embarrassment she felt. Hey, I saved you, you know. Su Ming widened his eyes. He saw the anger in Bai Ling's eyes and felt a little guilty. Nonetheless, when he remembered that he had saved her, he felt his actions were justified. You don't want to? Fine, you're a berserker anyway. There may be a lot of wild beasts and traps here, maybe even some wings of the moon. But, if you're careful, you should be fine. Alright, I'll be taking my leave. Su Ming yawned and turned towards the direction of his tribe. However, before he could even take a few steps forward, he heard a gentle voice speaking anxiously. Then, thank you, I don't know the way, please send me back to my tribe. Su Ming's spirits immediately lifted, but he kept a straight face. He even frowned a little, looking as if he was extremely reluctant to escort her back. He cast a glance at Bai Ling, then crouched down and spoke impatiently. Hurry up, we'll see whether we can get back before night falls. If we can't, we'll have to find a place to spend the night. Bai Ling widened her eyes and stared at Su Ming. She was beginning to somewhat understand the person before her. When she thought of the incident that happened at the square, she did not know what to say to him. More importantly, he appeared when she had given up all hope. She would never forget the resolution and determination in his eyes when he appeared in the cave. Blushing, Bai Ling gently walked to Su Ming's side and climbed onto that frail back of his once more. She could hear her heart beating rapidly against her chest, but she could not identify the emotion she was experiencing at that moment. Su Ming ran through the forest like a monkey with Bai Ling on his back. He really liked the sweet smell she exuded. As he ran, he changed his path and circled around the forest. After a while, Bai Ling's eyes glinted with an odd expression. She started to wrap her arms tighter around Su Ming's neck. We've walked through this place 3 times, she spoke softly as she looked at a withered tree not far from their location. What, really? Am I lost? Wait, I'll go check. Su Ming faltered in his footsteps. He looked surprised and scrutinized his surroundings before he nodded his head gravely. You're right, I've never come to this place before. There was no hint of awkwardness on his face as he changed direction and started running once again. Time passed by slowly. They only managed to cover about half the distance to Dark Mountain Tribe by sunset, a destination they should have arrived at by twilight. However, Su Ming brought Bai Ling to Dark Mountain Tribe on the way back. He looked at his tribe from afar. When he saw no signs of abnormality from within the tribe, he felt at ease and left. When Bai Ling saw the sky darkening, the expression in her eyes became even odder. Once the sky became completely dark, Su Ming stopped at a part of the forest and looked at Bai Ling helplessly. Looks like we'll have to spend the night here. The forest is dangerous at night. We can only move ahead tomorrow morning. The cunning look Su Ming saw the first time he met Bai Ling had returned. She watched Su Ming quietly and did not speak. Under her gaze, Su Ming felt increasingly guilty. All right then, let's spend the night here. After a while, Bai Ling smiled. Her smile was really beautiful and her wild vibe resurfaced. Su Ming touched his nose and smiled as well. He got up and built a temporary resting place on a big tree. Then he sat there with Bai Ling. Both of them fell silent. It was as though they did not know what to say to each other. I still don't know your name. After some time, Bai Ling looked at Su Ming. Her eyes were even brighter under the moonlight. I'm Su Ming. I know your name is Bai Ling, Su Ming said as he looked at Bai Ling and smiled. You lied to me at the square, right? HMPH, I thought it was odd when I went back to the tribe, said Bai Ling as she blinked and wrinkled her nose. It was really adorable. That is, you're also not the young lord of Dark Mountain Tribe, right? Bai Ling looked around with her bright eyes and spoke while chuckling softly. Su Ming scratched his head, not knowing what to say. At that moment, snow started falling from the sky. The entire sky was decorated with white flakes of snow. Oh, it's snowing. Su Ming changed the subject by immediately lifting his head and looking at the snow. Bai Ling smiled through her eyes. She did not continue with the topic and chose to look at the sky as well. She looked at the snow. Some of them fell on her face. It felt cool and comfortable. The snow became heavier and the two individuals in the forest seemed entranced by its beauty. They were silent. Su Ming, thank you. The sky was already dark to begin with. However, as the moonlight reflected off the surface of the snow, their surroundings appeared to be illuminated by a silvery light. As such, the forest was not as dark as it was previously. Thank you for saving me. Can you tell me about yourself? Why were you there? Bai Ling looked at Su Ming and spoke softly. I usually go to the mountains to pick herbs. That was a place I found accidentally and I use it as a shelter to avoid the cold. I just didn't expect to see wings of the moon yesterday. Su Ming did not talk about using the place for quenching herbs. Instead, he told her a different story. Time passed by slowly. During the snowy night, Su Ming and Bai Ling talked with each other more and gradually got to know each other. Their voices were carried away by the winds blowing in the winter. The elder of Dark Dragon Tribe is my grandma. My dad and mom left Dark Dragon Tribe a long time ago. I heard from my grandma that they went to a tribe bigger than Wind Stream. They haven't been back for a long time. Bai Ling hugged herself and spoke about her past in a low tone under the snow. I don't even know who my dad and mom are. I was brought back to the tribe by the elder, Su Ming mumbled. Ah, so that's how it is. That's why I thought you looked much frailer compared to the others. You're not even as tall as I am. Your elder must have been mistreating you. Bai Ling widened her eyes. No way, the elder is very good to me. Besides, you may be tall but I heard from the elder that in a few years, I'll also be as tall as you. Also, you're not as big as the other girls in your tribe, Su Ming laughed and said. That's because my elder taught me a berserker art. I heard that my mom asked my grandma to teach me the art when I grow up. Bai Ling looked at Su Ming's hair, now dyed white with snow. She smiled teasingly as she spoke. Chapter 33, Lei Su. Look at your hair, it's white. Bai Ling covered her mouth and laughed. The light in her eyes was so bright it made the strange feeling in Su Ming's chest become stronger. I'm not the only one. Your hair has also become white. You're an old woman now. Su Ming pointed at Bai Ling and laughed. The two of them laughed and talked, feeling more familiar with each other. During that snowy night, Su Ming was happy but he also felt that time was passing by too quickly. Before he knew it, the sky started to brighten up. It was not due to the snow but because the sun had risen. Night was over. When the sun shone and brightened up the sky, snow was still falling. Su Ming and Bai Ling came down from the tree. Once they cleaned themselves up, they smiled at each other. Su Ming did not say anything but squatted down instead. Bai Ling's eyes lit up briefly and she climbed once more onto his frail back. A warm feeling blossomed in her chest. This time, the strange feeling became clearer the closer he got to Dark Dragon Tribe. He was unwilling to part with Bai Ling. Slowly, he became silent, his footsteps became slower and he started circling around the forest again. Bai Ling hung onto Su Ming's back. Just like the day before, she saw a lot of the sights repeatedly and knew that Su Ming was walking around in circles. However, this time, she did not speak. She placed her head against Su Ming's back, listening to his heartbeat. Nevertheless, everything had to come to an end eventually. The sun had risen to the highest point in the sky and begun setting once again. The outline of Dark Dragon Tribe appeared in Su Ming's line of sight despite the snow falling from the sky. When he saw the tribe, Su Ming placed Bai Ling on the ground with a smile on his face. "You're home." Bai Ling took a look at her tribe, then back at Su Ming. The expression was on her beautiful face was unreadable. She nodded her head silently and walked towards Su Ming. She then swept the snow on Su Ming's body away with her clean hands. "Thank you. I hope you'll return to your tribe soon." Bai Ling opened her mouth again like she was about to say something, but in the end, she just remained silent. She smiled beautifully and walked back to her tribe. Su Ming stood there watching Bai Ling gradually disappear from his sight. As he looked at the petite figure occasionally turning towards him to wave, his mind went blank. As the distance between them grew bigger, the falling snow became an invisible barrier. It obstructed his sight and covered the figure of the person walking away. It was akin to walking past an icy plain. If he did not return, he would not see the ice melting. It was like a memory. If he did not remember it, he would not be able to recall the voice of the person who sighed in that memory. After a long time, Su Ming shook his head. He took one more look at Dark Dragon Tribe and turned away. The snow had been his companion when he came and the snow was still his companion when he left. The snow fell on his body and on his hair, but Su Ming thought he was missing something. "Do I like her?" Su Ming ran in the forest towards Dark Mountain Tribe. There was a frown between his brows as he ran. In his head, he only saw Bai Ling. "It's different from how I feel towards Xianxia." Su Ming took a deep breath and shook his head vigorously. He wanted to be rid of the strange and unfamiliar feeling in his chest. Once he calmed down, he ran even quicker. When the sky became dark, the stars shone around the moon and the snow still fell endlessly from the sky. Su Ming finally returned to his home, Dark Mountain Tribe. He stole a look at the tribe from afar yesterday and could roughly tell that the tribe was unharmed. Now that he was back, he saw his tribe members standing guard on night watch outside the giant wooden gate. The tribe settlement was very quiet. The bonfire in the square was still burning as usual and making crackling sounds. Su Ming walked in and looked around. He then arrived outside the elder's house. There was still light from the elder's house, a clear sign that he had not gone to rest. "Su Ming, right, come in." The elder's voice traveled from within the house with a hint of fatigue. Su Ming lifted the leather flap gently and walked in. He saw the elder sitting cross-legged in the middle. His white hair was slightly messy too. "Elder," Su Ming called out to him in a low voice. Then he sat in a corner. "The tribe is fine, don't worry." The elder looked at Su Ming with a smile on his face. He gestured for Su Ming to sit by his side and patted Su Ming's head, his smile becoming wider. "You've reached the 3rd level. You did well." Su Ming looked at the elder and slowly told him everything he saw within the cave. He went into the details especially regarding the corpse. As he talked about it, he saw the elder's face becoming serious. "Wherefore doth thou wail, O blue sky?" "Elder, what does this mean?" Su Ming frowned. "The legends are true." The elder looked at the leather flaps as if his eyes could see through them and they allowed him to look at Dark Mountain. That should be a rhetorical question. Perhaps it meant, why should I be sad when compared to the lonely, endless sky? Or perhaps, there is another meaning to it, the elder sighed. Then he spoke slowly. It was a voice burdened by his experiences in life when a thought struck his head. I don't really understand the words about worshipping the fire. Perhaps you saw it because it's your destiny. The elder averted his gaze from the flaps and looked at Su Ming kindly. I'll be going to Wind Stream Tribe in a month's time. If you're wandering outside by then, remember to come back. One more thing, elder. I saved a Dark Dragon Tribe member in the nest of the Wings of the Moon. Her name is Bai Ling. She's the granddaughter of the elder of Dark Dragon Tribe. The elder nodded his head. Then as he remembered something, he spoke once again. Bai Ling. He was momentarily surprised. He fell into silence for a while. Then told Su Ming to go back and rest. Once Su Ming left, a hint of nostalgia appeared in the elder's eyes. Lei Su, your granddaughter was saved by my little Le Su accidentally. Perhaps this will allow you to reduce your hatred towards me a little. The elder sighed and the hint of nostalgia in his eyes grew thicker. The blood-red moon appeared earlier. Then there's also the strong chi that suddenly appeared from Black Mountain Tribe during that night. I can feel disaster brewing. The elder closed his eyes as he mumbled. His voice was filled with worry. Su Ming left the elder's house and walked around the tribe. He did not return to his own house but went to Lei Chen's. When he saw that Lei Chen was injured but still up and about, he applied salve on his wounds. Once he did so, his worries went away. Lei Chen was also happy to see Su Ming. He hit his chest and bragged about his fight against the Wings of the Moon. Su Ming left smiling after they talked for a long time. It was already midnight but Su Ming's gaze fell on a brightly lit house not far away. As he did so, hesitation appeared on his face. It was the head of the guard's house. It was also Bai Ling's house. Chapter 34. Fire Berserker Art. After a moment of hesitation, Su Ming looked at the light coming from the house but he did not walk forward. He walked back to his own house underneath the moonlight, surrounded by falling snow. His house was cold. Perhaps it was because he had been away for a few days. He could even see his own breath coming out in white puffs. A bystander would have felt cold just by watching it. The house lacked warmth. It was completely different compared to Lei Chen's house when he visited. Su Ming quietly searched for some firewood and coal. He then quietly kindled a fire alone in the house. He could have resisted the cold easily with the chi of a third-level practitioner of the blood solidification realm. Yet for some unknown reason, he felt that the house was lacking something. He sighed and lit up the firewood. The fire slowly spread to all the wood in the pile and brought about a sense of warmth to the house. It chased away the cold and spread the heat around all corners of the house. Su Ming sat beside the fire and stared into it, letting his mind wander as he did so. He had always been envious of Lei Chen, Bai Ling and Chen Xin since he was young because they had a home. They had parents. No matter how well the elder took care of Su Ming, he was still the elder of the tribe. Most of his time was spent protecting and helping the members of the tribe. Since he was young, Su Ming already learned how to be independent. He learned how to live by himself and most of all, he learned how to be alone. It was snowing heavily outside. The winds also moaned as they blew past the tribe. They caused the leather flaps on the door to flutter, making crunching noises. Sometimes, wind would escape through the door and flaps into the house, causing the fire to move about violently. Su Ming sat by the fire hugging his knees as the light from the fire shone on him. He looked into the fire and after a long while, he sighed. The elder said I was adopted, then are my mom and dad still around? Su Ming's eyes were filled with loneliness. He had kept this thought buried deep within over the years because he did not want anyone to see that he was lonely. He always hid it behind a smile. On that snowy night however, after feeling the warmth in Lei Chen's house and returning to his own cold wooden house, he could not hide it any longer. Bai Ling's dad and mom are also not by her side. I wonder if she's already resting or is she like me, sitting by the fire thinking about, Su Ming mumbled as he recalled Bai Ling's figure and her bell-like laughter. He froze all of a sudden. Somewhere in his mind he began formulating an answer to why he felt so strangely towards Bai Ling. Part of it was perhaps related to her beauty but that was not the main reason. It was mostly because Su Ming felt the same sort of loneliness beneath her smiles and cunning. As time passed by, the warmth within the house increased and chased away the cold. Condensed droplets of water began forming on the walls of the house. The heat seemed to warm Su Ming's heart, causing the loneliness he felt to dissipate slightly. Right then, as though the heavens were against it, a huge gust of wind blew past. It brought a large amount of snow from the lands outside into the tribe. The wind was so strong, it was like an invisible hand sweeping across the tribe. The creaking noise from Su Ming's house immediately became louder, and even the door connected to the leather flaps was thrown open. The howling sound of the wind immediately filled the house. Some of the snow also found its way into his house and fell on the fire. It sizzled furiously, before dying away quickly. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the door shaking in the wind. Then he looked at his house that was invaded by the cold so easily just as it finally started to warm up. He stood up silently and left his house. He then stood in the blizzard and stared at the sky. A vague outline of the moon was in the sky, which was being ravaged by the blizzard. As he looked at the moon, Su Ming thought of the wings of the moon and of the corpse he saw in the ruins of the Fire Berserker tribe. Most of all, he thought of the words left behind by the corpse. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes. If t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep thought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Su Ming mumbled. These words had appeared in his mind numerous times. He was still trying make sense of them but felt that he was missing something. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. I understand what he meant by the desire to obtain berserk. It basically means the lust for berserk, but it's not something good. But who, exactly, was the persona? Was the corpse talking about himself? Doesn't seem likely. Su Ming sat outside his house in the blizzard. To him, there was no difference being outside or inside the house. There was no warmth in both places. At the very least, when he was outside, he had the wind as his companion and he could also look at the moon. Who was the persona? I don't know. Then there's the second half of the lines, spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes. These lines are illustrating a picture. It's as if they're talking about fusing fire into blood, and just by thinking about it, they can burn the skies. Su Ming's eyes shone brightly. He sat in the snow and looked at the moon in the sky as he sank into his thoughts. If t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, the elder once said that the sun was yang and the moon was yin. What he said made sense. During daytime, you will usually feel warmth, but when it's nighttime, it would usually be cold. But what is the moon of fire though? The color of fire is red. Could it be referring to the red moon, the blood moon? Su Ming frowned, unable to understand it. I wilt sink into deep thought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9. Did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. This seems to be referring to an action, the authorities of fire. Su Ming looked at the moon in the sky as a thought flashed through his mind, causing his eyes to brighten up. Could it be? This is actually a berserker art. Su Ming's breathing quickened. He took a deep breath. After he analyzed the words in his head, his belief that they actually conveyed a berserker art was even stronger. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes. These lines are actually talking about how strong the berserker art is. I wilt sink into deep thought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9. Did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. These words could only be talking about how one could learn this berserker art. That's right, that's what it should be. As for, if t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, this should be talking about the prerequisites for learning this berserker art. Su Ming brightened up. These words had been bothering him for the past few days. Now that he had analyzed them, he immediately cheered up. Nonetheless, after a while he frowned again. There's still something wrong. The prerequisite to learn this berserker art is the moon of fire, but now it is not. Must I wait for a few more years until the blood-red moon appears again before I can learn this? Su Ming fell silent until the moon in the sky was replaced with the light from the sun. Even when morning had arrived, Su Ming still had no idea how to learn the berserker art. With a sigh, Su Ming stood up and moved his body. As the members of the tribe came out of their houses and began to busy themselves with a new day of work, Su Ming went out of the settlement. The requirement to reach the 4th level of the blood solidification realm is 25 blood veins. I only have 11 blood veins now, so I need to hurry up with my training. I still need to create that mountain spirit as well. I wonder what its effects will be. I hope it'll be useful for my training. Su Ming ran towards the forest. His speed had increased once again ever since he reached the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. He arrived at Black Flame Mountain by noon and climbed towards the cave. Halfway up the mountain, a smile appeared on his face. He heard Xiao Hong's voice. He lifted his head and saw a red silhouette lying beside the entrance of the cave. In its paws was a wild fruit, which it was eating away at lightning speed. As it ate, its eyes kept wandering around. When Su Ming saw the monkey, it also saw Su Ming. Its eyes lit up and it ran towards Su Ming as it threw away the half-devoured fruit. It even climbed onto Su Ming's back and let out a few cries of excitement. A happy smile appeared on Su Ming's face and he continued climbing. Not long after, he arrived outside the cave. He took in a deep breath of the mountain air before climbing into the cave with the little monkey. Time passed by peacefully. Su Ming once again returned to his daily life of quenching herbs and training. During the night, he would also look at the moon in the sky and think about the true meaning of the moon of fire. He even spent some effort to create some small holes on the walls of the cave he used for quenching herbs. This was so that he could observe the moon outside through the little holes even if he was sitting in the cave. Muffled sounds came out from the cave and as time passed by, the sounds gradually became much less. On the 7th day, Su Ming finally managed to create Mountain Spirit. It was a dark blue pill. The medicinal scent from the pill was not strong, but when he placed it under his nose to sniff it, it was like sniffing mountain air. There was also an indescribable feeling roaming about his entire body. Mountain Spirit. Su Ming squatted down outside the cave and looked at the pill in his hands as he welcomed the sunset. The creation of this pill was much harder for him than scattering dust. The chances of failure were very high. He had already used half of the cloud gauze grass he bought back but only managed to create 2 of them. Due to the difficulty in creating Mountain Spirit, Su Ming was reluctant to even use one of them for an experiment. It should not be poisonous. Su Ming sniffed the medicinal scent coming from the pill. He took a long time observing it, trying to decide what their effects could be based on his experiences. Gradually, the sky darkened. When it became completely dark, Su Ming's eyes became resolute. He placed the pill into his mouth. The pill was different from scattering dust. It did not melt when he placed it on his tongue. Su Ming frowned. He chewed it a few times before the pill was crushed. Then he swallowed it. Nonetheless, he felt nothing after waiting for a while. Su Ming touched his stomach and waited a little longer. He even went back into the cave to activate and circulate the blood in his veins. Even so, it was just like before. There was no difference. That's strange. Su Ming sank into deep thought. After a moment, his eyes brightened up and he took a small bottle containing scattering dust from his bosom and swallowed one of the pills. The scattering dust immediately melted in his mouth and a shred of heat spread through his entire body. Yet at that moment, a sudden astonishing burst of heat erupted from his body. Translator's note. Now then, for all readers who compared this to the Raws, in chapters 1 to 25, the houses were wooden houses, and so for consistency's sake these houses will remain as wooden houses, not leather tents. Chapter 35. The Moon of Blood appears. The wave of heat came too suddenly. It was as if the heat had always been inside Su Ming's body and was only activated due to the scattering dust he took. Su Ming shuddered. He felt as though his entire body was about to burn. It even made him think of the man from Black Mountain tribe who died due to his scattering blood. Su Ming did not panic. Instead, he remained calm. While he did feel like he was burning, in his state of calm he discovered the difference slowly. The burning sensation did not come from his blood. In fact, the blood in his body was flowing and circulating around his body at a frightening speed. The fact that Su Ming felt as if he was burning was because his blood was circulating too quickly. He could even feel his own heartbeat increasing at a maddening speed. It felt like exploding. What a strong medicine. Su Ming's face was red, but still he never lost his calm in the slightest. As he mumbled to himself, he closed his eyes. He immediately sank into the feeling of his blood and qi circulating in his body. Sweat covered his body. The 11 blood veins also appeared simultaneously and gave off a piercing light. The red light lit up the entire cave. It looked like it was hell dyed in the color of blood. As his qi circulated throughout his body, the red light on his body became even stronger. A large amount of blue veins also appeared on his body and looked as if they were pulsing. They made Su Ming look positively ferocious. 2 hours passed by. Within those 2 hours, the beast-skin shirt Su Ming wore appeared to be soaked in water. It was dripping with a large amount of sweat. Su Ming's body was also burning red. The 11 blood veins shone so brilliantly on his skin that they looked like wounds. At that moment, Su Ming opened his eyes. They were bloodshot. He roared, and as he did so, the 12th blood vein manifested on his skin. The speed in which it manifested was so quick. It seemed to have moved from its illusionary state to the physical state almost instantly. Su Ming's qi became stronger once more. However, it was not the end. After the 12th blood vein appeared, the burning sensation in Su Ming's body only disappeared slightly. Very soon, Su Ming let out another roar and the 13th blood vein manifested itself on his skin. When the 13th blood vein manifested, there was movement in his hair despite the lack of wind. A strong presence then flared up from within his frail body. The speed of the blood flow in his body no longer made him feel as though he had insufficient blood. Instead, he felt as if he had too much. If he did not concentrate on manifesting the blood veins, his body would have exploded. Despite the appearance of 2 blood veins, some of the burning sensation was still prevalent in his body. Su Ming's face was twisted. The burning sensation over his entire body was hard to bear. He lifted his right hand and tore away his shirt, leaving himself bare-chested and showing all 13 blood veins on his body. They did not appear in order and were instead scattered across Su Ming's chest, back, and arms. The color of the blood veins were a bloody red. They looked like would have bled at any moment. There was a large amount of sweat on Su Ming's body, and under the illumination of the red light, it made him appear strangely beautiful. Su Ming's eyes became increasingly bloodshot, but there was no hint of madness in them. They were still calm. Everything was within his control. As he felt the qi within his body, Su Ming did not hesitate and activated the blood in his veins repeatedly in accordance to his inheritance from the statue of the god of berserkers. It refined and thickened the viscosity of the blood in his veins. Another hour passed by. When Su Ming lifted his head and shouted at the sky, the 14th blood vein appeared vaguely on his body. High shout echoed endlessly within the cave. It sounded like a lot of people roaring at the same time. Come out, 14th blood vein. Su Ming's body trembled as the strong presence within his body became even more intense. Judging by the speed of the 14th blood vein's manifestation, it was supposed to appear in its complete form on his body soon. Yet even after 15 minutes passed by, the 14th blood vein continued to struggle as though there was something missing. Su Ming could feel his qi slowing down within his body. The heat in his body had almost dissipated completely. If it ended, he would have failed to manifest the 14th blood vein, and he would have had to wait for the next time to do so. Without any hesitation, Su Ming grabbed the other mountain spirit lying by his side. Su Ming immediately placed the pill in his mouth and bit down furiously, swallowing it once he crushed it. Then he immediately took out another scattering dust and swallowed it. His body began shaking furiously. The burning red color that had almost disappeared from his skin appeared once again, turning his skin into a shocking red. The heat he felt in his body burned intensely once again. Its intensity was even stronger than before, reaching a height where even Su Ming found difficult to bear. Come out, 14th blood vein. There was a vicious side to Su Ming that even he himself did not realize. It had been accumulating for a long time, little by little, from the little things that happened in his life. As he growled once again, the 14th blood vein immediately manifested and gave out an enchanting red glow. Once the 14th blood vein appeared, Su Ming did not stop. He immediately swallowed another 2 scattering dusts, all for the purpose of increasing his power in one go. He had been continuously thinking during the 7 days of quenching and creating medication. Su Ming knew about the early appearance of the wings of the moon and the worry behind the elder's smile in the tribe. He may not have spoken about it, but in the corners of his mind, he knew that disaster was about to fall on the tribe. Once he thought about the elder of Dark Mountain tribe arriving at a breakthrough in his training, the elder mentioning there was a traitor within the tribe, and all the talk about danger. Su Ming became extremely worried. He wanted to help the elder and the tribe, but with his current strength, it was clear that it was not enough. He wanted to become stronger. He wanted to become powerful. After the 14th blood vein appeared, Su Ming once again activated and circulated the qi in his body. The 15th blood vein almost seemed like it was forced out of his body by the insane flow of blood in his body. After a long while, Su Ming quivered in pain, but he did not stop. As the blood circulated in his body, he bellowed and the 15th blood vein manifested. The 15 blood veins resembled 15 scars on the naked top half of his body. As they glowed in a red light, Su Ming looked even more powerful. However, Su Ming was not satisfied with only 15 blood veins. He continued to circulate the blood in his veins as time passed by. The 16th blood vein appeared abruptly. By then, most of the heat in his body had disappeared. It seemed like it was about to end. A cold glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Without a sound, he lifted his right hand and slammed it against his chest. With that hit, a strong force traveled into his body and stimulated his rapidly beating heart. Come out, 17th blood vein. Due to the shock, his heart pumped out more blood, which rushed around his body rapidly once again. Then on his chest, the 17th vein appeared. Once the 17th blood vein appeared, the burning sensation in Su Ming's body dissipated. There was no longer any heat and intensity in his body. His entire body felt drained. Su Ming knew it was the aftereffect once the effects of the medication went away. At the same time, there was a light stinging pain in his body. It meant that his body was injured during the forceful training earlier. I'm a practitioner of the ways of the berserker. This sort of pain and injury is nothing. Su Ming mumbled. He could feel that the power in his body had increased by at least 1-fold. A look of resolution appeared in his eyes. He did not get up. Instead, he brought out an herb from his torn beast skin shirt. It was the sky stone he obtained earlier. This was the strongest herb he had besides the pills. Besides the portion he gave to Lei Chen, he would not have used it easily. Nonetheless, he brought them out with unwavering determination. He wanted to increase his strength as much as possible in one go. As Su Ming took the herb in his hand, he left out one leaf for later use and swallowed the rest. He also consumed a scattering dust to increase the effects of the herb. A cool sensation immediately erupted within his body. The residue of the heat immediately fused with the cold. A cold feeling began to form in Su Ming's body, causing the red color on the 17 blood veins to become even more distinctive. Su Ming's body began to turn blue in the cold, but his blood once again circulated in his body rapidly. 2 hours passed by, then another 4 hours. When the sky started to turn bright white, Xiaohong came back from playing outside. Su Ming still sat there cross-legged without moving. Xiaohong knew Su Ming was training. It laid down by his side and looked at him for a moment. Then it yawned and fell asleep. Morning became noon, then noon became dusk. Soon, the sky was dark once more. Only the light from the moon which fell on the snow scattered all over the land. There were no longer just 17 blood veins on Su Ming's body, but 19. The 2 extra blood veins appeared on his arms and glowed red. Midnight came. The red light Su Ming's body lit up the entire cave. He slowly opened his eyes and let out a shaky breath. His eyes were filled with a threatening glint. When he saw Xiaohong snoring lightly by his side and occasionally grabbing his own fur, he smiled. He averted his gaze from Xiaohong's body and looked at the small holes decorating the walls of the cave. From his position, he could see the weather and the moon outside. Su Ming slowly closed his eyes and was about to activate the qi within his body and cure the injuries he sustained during training. Just as he was about to close his eyes though, Su Ming suddenly opened them. He could feel something was different about the moon when he saw it from the multiple little holes right before. When he looked at it again, he widened his eyes. There was a hint of red on the moon in the sky. Chapter 36. The Mockery from Ancient Times. Su Ming was stunned. When he looked at the moon once again, the red hint had disappeared as though it was just an illusion. Su Ming's eyes turned grave. He did not believe that it was just an illusion. He became silent as he stared at the moon once again from the small holes on the wall. Time passed by slowly. While Su Ming looked at the moon, he did not circulate the qi around his body. As such, the red light disappeared quickly from the cave and everything returned to normal. After a while, Su Ming frowned. Could it really be a mistake? Su Ming sighed. He was just about to close his eyes and forget about the moon when a thought crossed his head. He frowned. That's not right. Somewhere in his mind, he caught onto a train of thought, but the thoughts flitted around in his head as if they were about to disappear at any second. It was very difficult for him to gather them together. Red moon, red, Su Ming mumbled and lowered his head to look at this body. He remembered the moment he saw the red moon was when the medicine had just worn off. His blood was circulating around his body according to his will, and there was red light lighting up the cave. His eyes gradually brightened up as he thought about it. The muddled thoughts in his head gradually became clear. After a moment, Su Ming instantaneously opened his eyes as he activated and circulated the blood in his body. The 19 blood veins appeared on his body at once and released a piercing red glow. Not only was his body enveloped in the red glow, the cave was also dyed in a red light. Su Ming focused his eyes on the moon from the multiple little holes. Under the glare of the red light, he took a deep breath as a look of comprehension appeared in his eyes. They became increasingly serious at the same time. At that very moment, the moon appeared red. The moon itself was not red, but because the cave was enveloped in red, Su Ming was looking at the moon underneath the red light. It was only logical for him to think that the moon had turned scarlet. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes. If t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep bethought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Su Ming looked at the red moon and mumbled. I wilt sink into deep bethought, I wilt sink into deep bethought. The meaning of this line should be, the moon of fire will only appear if you think about it calmly and imagine it, but what am I imagining? As the fire in mine blood burns, the 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. No. These lines don't have much relation to imagination. It should be related to an action instead. Su Ming frowned. As of then, he was still controlling the circulation of blood in his body. It caused the red glow to become thicker. The red tint on the moon became clearer in his eyes. Imagination. Su Ming's eyes lit up abruptly as a thought struck him like thunder roaring in the sky. Could it be that I have to chant these lines? If t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep bethought. If that's the case, then the meaning is different. It doesn't mean that I should only start imagining when the moon of fire appears, but I have to imagine the moon of fire appearing. Su Ming trembled. He felt that he had just caught onto something important. He breathed in sharply and began thinking about the moon turning red in the sky quietly in his heart. The image kept repeating itself as time passed by. He even forgot about controlling the circulation of blood in his body once all his attention was focused on imagining the moon turning red. He also did not notice the blood-red light in the cave had already faded away and the cave had returned to its normal shade of color. He lifted his head and looked at the moon from the numerous holes on the wall. The image in his head was projected onto the moon. Red moon, burning moon, Su Ming mumbled. In his mind, the moon was red and the shade of red was becoming thicker, gradually turning the entire moon blood red. At that moment, Su Ming's entire body seemed to relax. He could feel a thin thread of red light falling down from the moon before his eyes. It floated through the little holes and fused into his eyes. Bit by bit, it flowed into his body and mixed with his blood. There was a cold sensation in his entire body and it assimilated into his blood, causing his qi to slowly circulate on its own in his body. Su Ming did not realize it. He felt as if the entire world had disappeared. The only thing that existed was the red moon, and it was becoming bigger and clearer in his sight. That red in the moon seemed to have some sort of mysterious force. As it shone, the light seeped into his body. Time passed by slowly. Xiao Hong had already woken up a long time ago, and it was watching Su Ming with a dumb expression not far away. There was a puzzled look in its eyes. It also looked at the moon outside from the little holes, but the moon looked just the same as it always did. It scratched its head and could not understand why Su Ming was daydreaming. No one noticed that at that very moment, amid the 5 summits on Dark Mountain, a mysterious change was also happening where all the wings of the moon were sleeping. It was especially so in the deeper parts of Black Flame Mountain. On the giant red tree within the magma-covered basin, numerous lion-like creatures were floating about. Sometimes, the faces of the wings of the moon would be visible. There were no looks of viciousness or sadness on their faces. Instead, there were expressions of obsession and excitement on their faces. No one knew what they were excited about, but judging by the speed of their movements, they were extremely excited. It was as if they were struggling to fly out of the tree but were prevented from doing so by some unknown force. It also seemed like they felt something, as though they were being summoned, or they were worshipping something, or perhaps they felt the berserker powers they had lost since ancient times. Within the fire berserker tribe that existed during ancient times, the corpse lying at its borders seemed to remain unchanged even though it was soaked in the fiery magma. However, the wall where its finger pointed at was empty. The words that Su Ming read the last time were gone. There was nothing there, but the words were not erased by anyone. It was as though they never existed. Even though the corpse was just a pile of bones, the look of mockery and aloofness on its face was even more distinct. Perhaps he was not mocking at what happened during his death, but what happened after. It was nighttime. As the moon showed signs of leaving and the first rays of sunlight appeared, a person covered entirely in black walked into the deeper parts of Dark Mountain. It was the same person who appeared in Black Mountain Tribe the night of the blood-red moon. He was walking very slowly. With each step he took, his body seemed to into something like an apparition. He would walk straight through the numerous dried trees in the forest. "It's not here either, just where is it?" The person sighed and spoke in a hoarse voice as he walked into the distance. As the sun appeared in the sky, he disappeared. Chapter 37. Xiao Hong's Exhilaration. The night was over. The last shreds of darkness were being chased away by the rays of morning sun. The moon in the sky turned into a crescent moon and was about to disappear. Su Ming, who was still in the cave on Black Flame Mountain, shivered and finally lowered his head. There was confusion, bafflement, and most importantly, a shred of emptiness in his eyes. When Xiao Hong saw the expression on Su Ming's face, it immediately puffed its fur up and retreated quickly until its back was pressed against the wall of the cave. Fear and shock appeared across its face. He saw the faint shadow of the blood-red moon slowly disappearing from Su Ming's eyes. The vague shadow of the blood-red moon finally disappeared completely from Su Ming's eyes after a long time, and he snapped out from his trance. Xiao Hong watched Su Ming by his side for a while with a dumbfounded expression. Bewilderment slowly edged itself onto its face. Su Ming took a deep breath. To him, the entire night had passed by in the blink of an eye. Now that his mind was clear, the memories of the night only served to make him even more confused. Once he checked his body, however, all his confusion turned into shock. "My injuries are all cured," Su Ming mumbled. His body had been injured when he forcefully trained himself. While the injuries had not been serious, he still knew from experience that he needed to meditate for a few days to recover. Yet now, he recovered in one night. After a long while, Su Ming drew in a breath and lifted his head. He only saw the clear sky and sun from the numerous holes in the wall. That was indeed a berserker art, an art belonging to the fire berserker tribe. This art has an incredible power. I only needed to sink into my thoughts for one night and all my injuries have healed. Su Ming's eyes lit up and he immediately activated the qi in his body. Soon, all 19 blood veins appeared on his body. However, when the 19 blood veins emerged, an odd expression appeared on Su Ming's face. He could faintly feel some leftover strength within himself. His expression became serious and once again, he began circulating the qi around his entire body. When the qi went through a few cycles around his entire body, the 20th blood vein appeared suddenly on his chest. Su Ming widened his eyes in shock. Once the qi in his body dispersed, he became even more surprised with what happened the previous night. His heart pounded against his chest. The incredible effects from mountain spirit had caught him by surprise. In addition to the discovery of the mysterious effects of the fire berserker art, a new path seemed to have opened itself right before Su Ming's eyes. Awakening. Perhaps I can reach the awakening realm and become a powerful berserker in the awakening realm. Su Ming took a deep breath and quelled the excitement in his chest. Xiao Hong ran towards him from where it was not far away and climbed onto Su Ming's shoulders. It stared into Su Ming's eyes with a confused expression. It even brought its paws up to pinch Su Ming's cheeks. Su Ming laughed and pushed the little monkey away. They played around for a while before Xiao Hong hissed at Su Ming as if it remembered something. It raised its right paw and sniffed it. An elated expression appeared on its face. It even licked its paw a few times and placed it right before Su Ming like it wanted Su Ming to sniff it. Su Ming was momentarily surprised. He noticed Xiao Hong doing the same thing for the past few months and had a few theories about it. However, he always thought there was something off about his theories. Now that he saw it again, he looked at Xiao Hong's right paw in his face with hesitation. He then sniffed it as Xiao Hong looked at him expectantly. A foul smell wafted its way into his nose. It made him push the paw away. He found Xiao Hong's actions funny and annoying at the same time. Xiao Hong immediately glared at him. It seemed displeased with how Su Ming pushed his hand away and hissed at Su Ming. Then it ran to a corner of the cave and sniffed its paw again. It had the same elated expression on its face, as if it once caught something in its right paw. It never had that habit before. Su Ming looked at Xiao Hong's expression and became even more surprised. As a thought flickered in his mind, he decided on something. A few days passed by since then and Su Ming was once again lost in the process of quenching herbs. The powerful effects of mountain spirit made his heart pound in excitement and his desire to create more of them increased. It was a pity that the failure rate for creating mountain spirit was incredibly high. Su Ming had only managed to create 2 pills after he used half of the cloud gauze grass he had in stock. Besides quenching herbs, Su Ming would also sit down and control the circulation of the blood around his body during the day. It allowed his body to stabilize even more in the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. A strong presence spread through his body. Based on Su Ming's analysis, he would have been able to fight against the berserker from Black Mountain tribe whom he killed using scattering blood face to face at this point. During the night, Su Ming would give up on the quenching of herbs and sit in the cave to stare at the moon. He pictured the image of the blood-red moon in his head quietly. However, the effects were no longer as powerful and strange as the first day. Even so, the training Su Ming did for the past few days allowed him to manifest another blood vein, turning him into a 22 blood vein berserker. That night, Su Ming sat down with his legs crossed and stared at the moon. As he was imagining the red moon, Xiao Hong, who had not gone out of the cave for a few days, got up silently. There was excitement and anticipation in its eyes. It sniffed its right paw with an exhilarated look on its face and watched Su Ming. Once it realized Su Ming was not looking, it ran out of the exit. The moment Xiao Hong disappeared from the cave, Su Ming opened his eyes. A smile appeared at the corners of his lips as he got up quietly and left the cave as well. I want to see just what it is that is captivating Xiao Hong. Su Ming was, after all, still a teenager. He was still inquisitive. After he noticed Xiao Hong's actions, his curiosity was sparked. With Su Ming's new strength as a 22 blood vein berserker, his speed and agility had arrived at an astonishing level. If he wanted it, there would not even be footsteps left on the snow. He could make it so that Xiao Hong did not notice him even as he followed it. Xiao Hong's speed was extremely quick in the night. It reached the foot of the mountain very soon. Su Ming followed it with a grin on his face. However, that grin left his face an hour later and was replaced by an odd expression. He saw Xiao Hong jumping around the forest with a destination in mind. It ran forward with absolutely no hesitation, obviously familiar with the route. It finally stopped in front of a burrow somewhere in the forest. Much of the plants around the burrow were already destroyed, making it look extremely messy. Xiao Hong paced outside the burrow quietly. There was vigilance mixed with anticipation in its demeanor. After it observed the burrow for a while, it rushed in quickly. Su Ming frowned when he saw this not far away. With all his years of experience being in the forest, he could tell with just one glance that the burrow was used by a big wild beast for hibernation. At that moment, a low roar filled with anger traveled out from the burrow and a red shadow immediately ran out from the burrow. As it ran, it would also let out piercing shrieks. There was also a hint of pride on its face. Su Ming saw a clear bundle of black fur in its right paw. Su Ming was uncertain of what it was, but soon after, the land trembled and a creature that looked like a giant bear roared within the cave. The beast was entirely black and had long fur. Its eyes were bloodshot with anger. When Su Ming saw the creature, a weird expression settled on his face. He saw that there was only a handful of fur left on a huge portion of the angry beast's groin. It looked positively stark, and clearly it was not the first time the fur over that part was plucked. It must have happened multiple times. When he remembered what Xiao Hong held in its hands, he could not help but also recall the time Xiao Hong asked him to sniff its paw just a few days ago. Su Ming widened his eyes abruptly. The wild beast roared and chased after Xiao Hong furiously, but it did not have Xiao Hong's speed. Before long, it whimpered as if it had given up. Then it returned to the burrow looking very downcast. After a while, huge clamoring sounds came from within the cave as though the beast was venting its anger. Su Ming's mind was blank. With a peculiar expression on his face, he chased after Xiao Hong. His speed was much faster than Xiao Hong's, and not long into the chase, he saw Xiao Hong's shadow from afar. Xiao Hong stopped at a part of the forest filled with dried trees. It looked around its surroundings. It then quickly rubbed the black fur on its groin. Su Ming could see the pride on its face clearly. That look of pride seemed to announce that it was as strong as the bear. In all honesty, it just looked more like a pervert at that moment. Su Ming's face was emotionless. He watched as Xiao Hong walked back into the forest proudly after it was finished with its business. It screeched, and then Su Ming saw a bunch of petite female monkeys whose fur were not red emerging from the forest quickly and surrounding Xiao Hong. He watched as the petite monkeys sniffed Xiao Hong's right paw. They were shocked and fearful. After that, they looked at its groin. Then Xiao Hong went into the deeper parts of the forest with the petite female monkeys, feeling proud of himself. Su Ming laughed wryly and sighed. He finally understood what was going on. Xiao Hong was using the might of a bear to attract the opposite sex. Su Ming did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not even know what to think of it. He quickly left the place and went into a trance again to forget about how he was persuaded to sniff Xiao Hong's right paw that day. He returned to the cave feeling embarrassed. Su Ming let out a long sigh. He pitied the bear that lost its fur. No wonder every time Xiao Hong went out, it had come back after a few days exhausted. After resting for a while, it'd recover its strength and go back outside. Su Ming touched his nose and forced himself to ignore the matter. Once again, he immersed himself in projecting the image of the red moon and sank into the mysterious feeling of having the red tint from the moon seeping into his blood. A few days passed by. One night, Su Ming was looking at the moon as he sat down cross-legged as usual. As he looked at the bright surface of the moon, the faint outline of the blood-red moon gradually appeared in Su Ming's vision. It shone brilliantly. Suddenly, the blood-red moon in his left vision seemed to burn. Su Ming trembled. A string of words crossed his mind. As the fire in mine blood burns, the 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Chapter 38. Burning of Blood. As the fire in mine blood burns, the 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. Su Ming mumbled instinctively. The string of words kept repeating themselves in his head, and it became louder each time they were repeated. It was like the roar of thunder by the end as they rumbled repeatedly in his head. The faint shadow of the blood-red moon became even clearer in Su Ming's eyes. It gave off a strange and enchanting glow as if it was burning. Su Ming felt a stab of pain in his eyes. The pain was not too obvious in the beginning. However, as time passed and the moon shone in the sky, the pain intensified until Su Ming started trembling. It seemed as though he could no longer bear it. He wanted to close his eyes and stop looking at the moon. The source of his pain was not the fire but the moonlight. At the same time, he had a strong feeling that somehow it all happened because it was the right time for him to learn this strange art. If he closed his eyes, he would be giving up on learning the art. He also had a feeling that if he gave up then, he would lose the right to learn it ever again. As the fire in mine blood burns, but how do I make it burn? Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot. The veins in his eyes surrounded the shadow of the blood-red moon which had substituted his pupils. It made Su Ming look especially ghastly at that moment. The burning image of the blood-red moon also burned away all the moisture in his eyes. His eyes looked dried up and bloodshot at the same time. It was like his eyes were about to wither away at any moment. Su Ming lifted his eyes and roared. His face was twisted as he controlled the circulation of blood in his veins. Yet, no matter how hard he pushed the blood towards his eyes, there were no signs of alleviation from the dryness in his eyes. If anything, it only made the withering sensation in his eyes even worse. Gradually, the moon began to fade from Su Ming's sight. If there was anyone besides Su Ming then, they would have clearly seen that Su Ming's eyes were still burning with red fire. The fire looked like blood and it was burning rapidly. How am I supposed to make my blood burn? Just how am I supposed to make my blood burn? Su Ming struggled. He could not understand the underlying meaning of the strange berserker art. As most of his field of vision faded away, he slowly closed his eyes. He knew that if he did not close his eyes by then, it was highly possible that he would no longer see light. Yet, at the very moment before his eyes closed completely, a strange picture appeared in Su Ming's head like a flash of lightning. It was something he saw before he saved Bai Ling. It was the pain and sadness on the wings of the moon's faces residing on the red branch in the fire cave. The wings of the moon repeatedly bit through their claws and wiped their eyes with them. Su Ming was startled. He understood something. That very moment before he completely closed his eyes, he opened them once again and brought his right hand to his mouth. He bit down resolutely. Immediately, blood flowed down from his fingertips. The moment his blood stained his entire finger, he raised his hand and smeared his eyes with the blood on his finger. The moment Su Ming smeared his eyes with blood, something like a bellow came out from between his eyebrows. His eyes immediately felt refreshed. Black Flame Mountain also seemed to quake lightly but strangely, not a single fleck of snow moved. It was as if the physical body of the mountain did not shake, instead, it was the spirit of the mountain which shook. At the same time, whiffs of air which could not be seen flowed out from within Black Flame Mountain suddenly. They gathered hastily around Su Ming. Su Ming did not know what it was, but he could feel the whiffs of air coming towards him. They were fusing into his eyes. It was as if his eyes had turned into a vortex and it was pulling in the air. The whiffs of air which entered his eyes were like rain that could extinguish the fire. As they flowed into his eyes, the dull look in Su Ming's eyes disappeared rapidly. His eyes could see clearly once again. However, amid the clarity in his eyes, there was a hint of a blood-red glint. The world Su Ming saw turned a bloody red at that moment. The burning and dry sensation in his eyes went away abruptly and were replaced with a refreshing feeling. The pain in his body also disappeared like the wind at the same time. As the whiffs of strange air gushed into Su Ming's eyes, they spread to his entire body before assimilating into his blood. Then along with the blood, they circulated around his entire body. The 22 blood veins were shining brightly in a scarlet light on Su Ming's body. When the light enveloped his entire body, the 23rd blood vein manifested out of nowhere. The moment the 23rd blood vein appeared, the blood-red tint in Su Ming's eyes flashed and the 24th blood vein manifested as well. After a long time, the sky began to brighten and the moon started to fade. Soon, it was going to be replaced by the sun. Su Ming stood up quickly and ran towards the exit. In the blink of an eye, he arrived outside. The winds in the mountain whined and led his long hair in a dance. The 24 blood veins shone fiercely on his body. Su Ming looked incredibly unearthly. He stood there and looked at the moon which was about to fade away. Suddenly, he breathed deeply in the direction of the moon. At that point, Su Ming saw the moon sway. A hint of red moonlight fell from the moon straight into Su Ming's eyes and it disappeared soon after. Su Ming shivered. On his neck, the 25th blood vein appeared. He had arrived at the 4th level of the blood solidification realm. Within most small tribes, a lot of value was attached to berserkers in the 4th level of the blood solidification realm. This meant that tribe members who had reached the 4th level could join the hunting team. It also meant that such a tribe member could become one of the main forces in the tribe should there be a battle. At the same time, the 4th level also signaled that the berserker had arrived at the peak of the early stages of the blood solidification realm. If they reached the 5th level, they would then become berserkers in the middle stage of the blood solidification realm. More importantly, once he reached the middle stage of blood solidification, there was hope for Su Ming to learn and use a new berserker art. Su Ming felt a powerful feeling of strength he had never felt before in his body. His whole demeanor was calm. He looked at the fading moon and the brightening sky as the blood in his veins circulated around his body. The whiffs of cold air seemed to rush towards his eyes. At the same time, huge amounts of air which held the same properties rushed towards him from the mountains. He even had a strange feeling that he could control the light from the moon. Under the guidance of this strange sensation, Su Ming lifted his hand slowly and waved lightly the very moment the moon was about to disappear. Chapter 39. I want to become stronger. The moment Su Ming waved his right hand, the fading crescent moon in the sky suddenly emitted a bright silver light. No one else could see the silver light. Only Su Ming could. As the silver light fell from the sky following Su Ming's hand motion, he saw the sky before him twisting. Then he saw the light he coaxed out from the moon blink and a roar rang through the sky. A big portion of the stone walls in front of Su Ming cracked and split into a large amount of debris that scattered on the ground. Some of the debris even fell into the stream on the mountain and they echoed for a long time. Su Ming widened his eyes and took a deep breath. He looked at his right hand with a dumbfounded expression. It took him a long time before he snapped out of his daze and looked at the sky. The moon had already vanished and the sun had risen. The land welcomed its first rays of sunlight for the day. Is this the fire berserker art? But this art is related to the moon. It has nothing to do with fire. Why is it so? Su Ming mumbled under his breath. His heart was pounding rapidly against his chest. When he guided the might of the moonlight with his right hand earlier, there was a strangeness to it that he did not understand. Nonetheless, the viciousness of the art made Su Ming's heart pound. He clenched his right fist and swung it against a big rock lying by his side as he activated his chi. The 25 blood veins manifested on his body, crisscrossing on his skin. As his fist touched the stone, a muffled boom rang in the air. Several cracks appeared on the stone. At the same time, a strong rebound traveled up along Su Ming's right arm into his body, but it was blocked by his chi. Su Ming took a step back. He looked at the multiple cracks which appeared on the big stone and his eyes shone with excitement. I can only make the stone crack even with my strength as a 4th level berserker in the blood solidification realm. If I cast Spirit Devourer and I find a suitable animal spirit, perhaps I can make the stone shatter, but this is already my full strength. If I compare this with that small ray of moonlight, then there's a huge difference between my strength and that moonlight. If one small ray of moonlight already had such powerful effects, then if I had more. Su Ming took a deep breath and laughed happily. He could feel his own body change and the power stored within his body. He began to look forward, for night to arrive. It's a pity I can only use the power of the moonlight at night. Su Ming went back into the cave. Su Ming had never looked forward for night to come so strongly before. He would lift his head and look out the holes to check the sky occasionally. He felt as if the day was passing by too slowly. Gradually, the day darkened once again and moonlight lit up the land. Su Ming quelled the excitement in his heart and looked at the moon. He took a deep breath as his eyes glinted. From the inheritance he obtained from the god of berserkers, Su Ming clearly knew that once he reached the 5th or even higher level of the blood solidification realm, he would be able to cast 2 extremely powerful berserker arts. They had been passed down Dark Mountain Tribe when it was still a middle-sized tribe hundreds of years ago. Dark Blood Dust and Execution of the 3 Evils. Dark blood dust gathers a drop of berserker blood within the body and allows the caster to obtain an astonishing burst of strength for a short period of time. As for Execution of the 3 Evils, Every time Su Ming thought about it, his heart pounded in excitement. Dark blood dust could only be cast by berserkers who had manifested more than 50 blood veins. It was even harder for execution of the three evils. The caster needed to manifest 200 blood veins to be able to cast the very first stage of the art. They could only then cast the first strike. To arrive at the 5th level of the blood solidification realm, he needed 53 blood veins. If he wanted to become a berserker at the 6th level, he needed 109 blood veins. As for the 7th level, he needed 243 blood veins. The peak of the middle stage of the blood solidification realm was the 8th level, where he would require 399 blood veins. Every level above the 9th level until the 11th level was considered the later stage of the blood solidification realm. At the 11th level, the number of blood veins required was a normal berserker's limit. He or she needed to manifest all 781 blood veins. If more blood veins were manifested, not only would the berserker become stronger, the chances of arriving at the awakening realm would also be higher. Su Ming's eyes shone. He looked at the moon in the sky and the anticipation within his eyes grew. As he imagined the moon turning red in his head, the red moon gradually appeared in his eyes. He also felt the burning sensation in his eyes again. This time, Su Ming did not hesitate and bit through the skin on his finger and smeared his blood over his eyes. His whole body seemed to cry out, and the strange sight which unfolded within Black Flame Mountain the day before occurred once more. I want to become stronger. The 25 blood veins manifested on Su Ming's body and shone in a blood-red glow as they absorbed the air from the mountain. Air was rushing towards him from all around. At the same time, as image of the blood-red moon shone in his eyes, Su Ming lifted his right hand and smeared the blood on his fingers across his eyes once again. The desire to obtain berserk spreads to all corners of the earth. Let fire burn in mine blood, let mine thoughts burn the skies, let fire burn heaven into ashes. If t be true the moon of fire appears from the clouds on the endless earth, I wilt sink into deep thought as the fire in mine blood burns. The 9 is the utmost of all, and the 1 is the law. Light up the berserker fires and worship the 9, did let us all becometh the authorities of fire. The 9 is the utmost of all. The 9 is the utmost of all. The meaning of this must be that I have to let my blood burn 9 times. Once Su Ming smeared his blood across his eyes again, his body trembled furiously. Tremors shook the entire Black Flame Mountain, but still, no one noticed the tremors this time as well. A stronger wave of the mountain's aura came rushing into Su Ming's body in the form of air. It made him feel as if he was about to explode. The light from the 25 blood veins became even brighter on his skin and started moving as if they were alive. At that moment, the 26th blood vein manifested on Su Ming's body, but it did not stop there. The 27th, 28th, 29th, right up to the 33rd blood vein manifested at the same time on his body. Su Ming's breathing quickened as his heartbeat raced against his chest. He was drunk on power. It seemed like he refused to wake up, but his mind was still clear. As the blood-red moon in his eyes shone once again, he lifted his right hand slowly and pierced the skin of his 3rd finger. The fresh blood gathering on his finger had some sort of mysterious power. Su Ming looked at the fresh blood and slowly placed it on his eyes. He was making his blood burn for the 3rd time. He had a strong feeling that if he could make his blood burn the 3rd time, his power would increase exponentially. That thought made his body shiver as he stared at his finger. Su Ming gritted his teeth and pressed his finger against his right eye and wiped it gently. The moment some of the blood smeared over his right eye, the entire dark mountain trembled. Not only did Black Flame Mountain tremble, the other 4 summits also shook as if their souls were shuddering. Many birds and beasts looked at the sky in fear and did not dare to move. However, when anyone looked at the mountains, they appeared normal. There were no obvious signs of change. Neither Dark Dragon Tribe nor Dark Mountain Tribe noticed it. Only Baitu, from Black Mountain Tribe and who had absorbed the blood of the wings of the moon to break through the awakening realm, noticed. His heart trembled. There was a shred of horror in his eyes as he went out of his house and looked into the sky. However, the sensation was fleeting and it disappeared like the wind. No matter how hard he tried to find it, he could not pinpoint the source of his fear. Aside from Baitu, All the wings of the moon residing within the deeper parts of the 5 mountains had excited looks on their faces when Su Ming attempted to burn his blood the 3rd time. They were in a frenzy, trying to break through the strange tree which held them. It was as though they were searching for their king. Nonetheless, they were held back by an unknown force and could not go out. At the same time, the strange red tree within Dark Mountain trembled. It was unknown whether it was trembling in agitation or fear. Meanwhile in the cave, Su Ming's eyes did not stop trembling as his right eye was smeared with fresh blood. The strong aura from the entirety of Dark Mountain charged into his body madly. It caused the blood veins on his body to manifest at a speed that terrified even Su Ming. 34, 35, 36, 42, 44, and they did not stop manifesting right up until the 47th blood vein. Su Ming could not continue any longer. The feeling like he was about to explode had become even more apparent. He could even vaguely hear the howls of the wings of the moon calling out from within Dark Mountain. He raised his right hand. His breathing was rapid as it came out in harsh pants. His entire body was drenched in sweat. At the same time, he could not feel the movement of Dark Mountain's soul anymore. The strong aura that rushed towards him also disappeared. The roars which rang faintly in his ears also disappeared and everything returned to normal. However, Su Ming knew that everything that had happened earlier was not normal at all. What a strong berserker art! I can feel that if I complete the 3rd cycle of the burning of blood, the number of my blood veins manifesting will increase by several fold. This is only the 3rd time. If I go through all 9 times. Su Ming took a shaky breath. He began to feel a bit apprehensive about continuing with this method of training. It's not only 9 times of that. From what I understand, once I have burned my blood 9 times, I can then worship the moon of fire. Once I worship it 9 times, I can then obtain the power to control all fire. At that moment, Su Ming felt as if his body had become unbelievably powerful. After some time, he lifted his head and his eyes were bright with resolution. If I train with this art using the pills, I will be able to reach the awakening realm. Su Ming clenched his fists. Chapter 40. Feeling of animosity. Time passed by as Su Ming immersed himself in the process of quenching herbs and his training. Xiao Hong returned to the cave exhausted after a few days as Su Ming was meditating. Its red fur had darkened several shades as well, illustrating just how tired it was. However, tired as it may be, there were expressions of longing and pride on its face. It kept sniffing its right paw and grinned as if it was giggling foolishly. When Xiao Hong came back, Su Ming opened his eyes slightly. When he saw Xiao Hong, he remembered what he witnessed the day he followed Xiao Hong into the forest. An awkward expression settled on his face. Xiao Hong noticed Su Ming's gaze and turned around to look at him. It immediately ran towards him and raised its right paw proudly. It extended its right paw to Su Ming, urging Su Ming to sniff it again. It felt that it had to share everything that was good with everyone. Su Ming did not know whether to laugh or cry. He no longer paid any attention to Xiao Hong and once again immersed himself in his training. The months soon passed by. The date Su Ming was to go with the elder to Wind Stream tribe loomed near. During this period of time, Su Ming used up all of the cloud gauze grass in his possession but only managed to create 1 mountain spirit. The high failure rate made Su Ming's spirits incredibly low. At the very least, his training had been pretty successful. He had completely settled into the 4th level of the blood solidification realm and managed to manifest 2 more blood veins, bringing the total blood veins he manifested up to 49 blood veins. He had also gradually adapted to the strangeness of the fire berserker art. However, the further down the path of the blood solidification realm, the harder it was to solidify more blood veins. Lately, no matter how hard Su Ming trained, he could no longer solidify any more of his blood. He understood that this was related to the incompletion of the 3rd burning of his blood. Moreover, when the moon was out at night, Su Ming acted according to his senses and tried to control the moonlight multiple times. However, the results were not obvious. It seemed like he could only control no more than a small ray of moonlight. Even though it was only a small ray of moonlight, in Su Ming's hands, it was incredibly sharp, even more so than his horn. Most importantly, Xiao Hong could not see the ray of moonlight. From that observation alone, Su Ming believed that he was the only one who could see the moonlight, no one else. It was daylight. Su Ming stood up and looked around the fire cave. After a moment of silence he pushed his barren cauldron aside. He did not know how long he would stay at Windstream Tribe. He needed to make preparations. On the walls of the fire cave were numerous fine ravines decorating the walls densely. Those ravines were created during the days Su Ming learned how to control the moonlight. Once he packed up, Su Ming left the cave. Xiao Hong had already woken up. When it saw that Su Ming was about to leave, it followed him quickly. When they arrived outside the cave, it climbed onto Su Ming's shoulders, too lazy to descend the mountain on its own. It's a pity mountain spirit is too hard to make. There were 8 holes underneath the picture of mountain spirit on the second door, so it's obvious I have to offer 8 of them. I wonder how long it'll take for me to offer up 8 mountain spirits without forsaking my own training. Besides, I also need to offer the pills called Fire of the South for the second door to open, but I've never seen the herbs required for the pills before. Thank the heavens for the bamboo slip the elder gave me. At least there are some descriptions of herbs there. Su Ming stood outside the cave and looked at the sun rising from the horizon. He breathed in the refreshing cold air around him. I can only open the second door after I have gathered enough mountain spirit and Fire of the South. At the very least there is no need for me to create the welcoming of deities. Still, it just shows how rare the welcoming of deities is. As Su Ming was deep in his thoughts, Xiao Hong, who was sprawled across his shoulders, grabbed his hair and hissed impatiently. Su Ming patted the little monkey's head and jumped down the mountain peak. The wind blew against him. It made his shirt and hair flutter. It also made Xiao Hong clutch onto Su Ming's hair tightly as it screamed in terror. Su Ming laughed. He grabbed onto a stone within his right hand's reach as he fell. Once he regained his momentum, he jumped down again. With his current abilities, Su Ming arrived at the foot of Black Flame Mountain before long. Snow still covered the forests. They were really soft under his feet as well. He sank when he stepped on them. Su Ming then ran into the distance. He originally intended to return to the tribe, but when he arrived at a crossroads, his footsteps faltered and he hesitated for a moment. Xiao Hong was sitting on Su Ming's shoulders. It seemed to be in a comfortable position. Occasionally, it would sniff its right paw with an exhilarated expression. It was slightly surprised when it saw Su Ming stop. The right path led back to his own tribe, whereas the left path, Su Ming gazed at the path. It led to Dark Dragon Tribe. I'll just go and take a look. Xiao Hong, have you ever seen Bai Ling? Oh, that's right, you've never seen her. Do you want to see her? Su Ming asked softly. Xiao Hong widened its eyes. It scratched the fur on its face and did not make a sound. All right, since you want to see her, I'll let you look at her from afar. Su Ming spoke as if he suddenly had a perfectly logical reason to go to Dark Dragon Tribe. He smiled and patted Xiao Hong's head. When Xiao Hong looked at him with an unamused expression, Su Ming ran down the left lane quickly. Su Ming arrived at the spot where he parted with Bai Ling when dusk arrived. The sun had turned red as it began to set. He squatted there and looked at the silhouette of Dark Dragon Tribe. He saw the other members of Dark Dragon Tribe moving in there, but he did not see Bai Ling. After a long time, Su Ming sank into his thoughts. He did not know what he was thinking. He only thought that Bai Ling was pretty. She was the prettiest girl he had ever seen in his life, and he wanted to look at her a few more times. After a moment of hesitation, he sat down quietly and chose not to take any action. Instead, he looked at the sky. When the sun was about to set and the sky about to darken completely, he stood up and walked forward briskly. He still kept a hint of awareness to his surroundings as he approached Dark Dragon Tribe. Nonetheless, he did not dare go too near the tribe. It was, after all, not Dark Mountain Tribe. If he was discovered, there was a possibility he would be in danger. While the relationship between Dark Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe was not as tense as Dark Mountain Tribe and Black Mountain Tribe, it did not mean that they were at peace with each other. If they met in the wild, they still regarded each other with hostility. It would have been even more so if they had discovered Su Ming, who had been lingering outside Dark Dragon Tribe. Ah, I shouldn't have done this. Su Ming mumbled as he continued walking forward. When he was about 10,000 feet away from Dark Dragon Tribe, he stopped walking. Su Ming grew up in the tribe and had been regularly going out into the wild to collect herbs. On occasion, he even ran into members from Black Mountain tribe. Caution and vigilance was practically second nature to him. He had seen too much violence in his life. Even if most of the violence happened to beasts which the hunting team brought back, living in such conditions for years had already influenced him unconsciously as a child. Besides, he had already killed someone. Not even Lei Chen had stained his hands with human blood before. As such, even if Su Ming wanted to see Bai Ling for some unknown reason, his instincts that were buried deep within told him to move only during the night. As an act of caution, Su Ming also chose to stop 10,000 feet away from the tribe. He squatted down and took a look at Dark Dragon tribe. Then, he turned around resolutely without hesitation and left the area around Dark Dragon tribe quickly. Yet just as he took a few steps forward, Su Ming felt goosebumps. A sense of danger far stronger than his meeting with the two berserkers from Black Mountain tribe came crashing towards him. As he leapt forward, he twisted his body abruptly and covered his head with both hands. His entire body curled into a ball as he hugged Xiao Hong tightly in his bosom, stopping in midair for a brief moment as if he was frozen. That moment, a sharp whistling sound sliced through the air. A long gigantic spear about 30 feet flew towards Su Ming like lightning from within the giant wooden fence surrounding Dark Dragon tribe. It rushed past Su Ming's body and stuck itself into the ground, creating a loud noise. The ground shook and snow flew into the air. It also stirred up a wave of air which spread across a wide area around the spear. Su Ming was lucky he was cautious enough to avoid it beforehand. He landed on the ground as he moved along the air's wave current and ran forward at full speed immediately. Leaving, a cold voice traveled from afar. A man with long hair wearing a shirt made of sackcloth chased after him with a fierce look in his eyes. As Su Ming ran forward, he turned back and looked at him with a cold glare in his eyes.